Chapter 1853, Time Cultivation Chamber. Chapter 1853, Time Cultivation Chamber. There were many damn rules for entering a one-star city. What more entering a four-star great city? Though Ling Han had entered into the city, this city was divided into 5 regions in total. Aside from the first level, which could be entered just by paying the entrance fee, the other 4 levels could only be entered after submitting an application. For example, a Severing Mundane tier could apply to go to the 2nd layer, Dividing Soul tier could go to the 3rd level, Immortal Palace tier could go to the 4th level, and Ascending Origin tier could go to the 5th level. Additionally, alchemists could also go to different levels based on their respective skill in alchemy. Of course, application was one story, but approval was quite another. Ling Han first found an inn to stay in on the 1st level. At present, he had to deal with the problem of the Black Murderous Curse first. He immediately entered into the Black Tower. Small tower? Ling Han called out softly. Black Murderous Curse, this is a little troublesome. If I use my power to erase it for you, that would very likely alert a few old monsters. Thus, the best method is still for you to experience rising from the ashes again, and the Black Murderous Curse would naturally be dispelled. Small Tower soon gave a response. Will it affect me at other times? Ling Han asked again. No, Small Tower said. It's fine even if you don't dispel it. Even if the curse activates and you die once, you can still revive through rising from the ashes. Furthermore, you can also use the Black Murderous Curse to temper yourself. Actually, this can be considered a blessing too. Ling Han's mouth couldn't help but twitch. You haven't had a taste of when the Black Murderous Curse activates, have you? That is definitely not a pleasant feeling. And he had to experience it once a year. He really had no wish to experience it again. To become a supreme celestial king, one must experience extreme suffering. If you do not even have this kind of perseverance, you had best not think of the 5th severance and just become an ordinary celestial king, enjoying a mediocre life, Small Tower said calmly. Fuck, though I know you are just egging me on, having it sunder a tower like you cast disdain on me like this, I really am not going to yield. Ling Han laughed loudly, showing his noble aspirations. Fine, I will struggle a bit then. Ling Han exited the Black Tower. Since there was no way he could seek out Commander Guan at this moment, he would just have the latter take the initiative to find him, and to achieve this, he had to become well known. There were many ways to become known. For example, running bare naked through the streets, or having S*X in the open. This was too tasteless. He was not the large black dog, so how could he do something like that? Then, should he kill a few profligate young masters with powerful backgrounds? No, this was a 4-star city. If he started a massacre, then he would have to flee for his life before Commander Guan could make his way here. This clearly was not reasonable either. Then, there was only one way left. Wasn't this the Alchemy City? What a coincidence. He was the Alchemy Emperor. Then, let him come and conquer this city, so that it would become an alchemy city that was deserving of its name. He already had a certain mastery of alchemy basics. Xiangyan had taught him a great many things. However, for the moment, he was unable to concoct a complete pill. After all, the reincarnation tree only helped to increase appreciation and understanding, but could not improve his practical skill. Something like alchemy still depended on practice. The Empress was in seclusion, so Ling Han brought the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden out for a breath of fresh air, walking around on the 1st level. This place naturally was also overwhelmingly huge. There were mountains and seas, and it could be compared to a gigantic planet. To completely walk a full circle here would need astonishingly long time. Thankfully, the majority of facilities were focused in the commercial area. Thus, they only had to walk around there. Whatever there was in the 1st level could be bought here. Ling Han mostly wanted to focus on alchemy. With his natural talent, he only had to show some of his skill, and there would definitely be alchemists going wild with joy, wanting to welcome and recruit him. He was definitely not going to do as the Blood Shadow Old Demon had said and become a subordinate for Lu Xianming. Who knew, maybe he would really develop here and treat this place like his future base in the celestial realm. That was because alchemy was a part of him that could not be severed, and this at least was the sacred place of alchemy in the Eastern Celestial Realm. If he inherited the Alchemy City, then wouldn't it become very natural for him to take the natural peach seal for his use? Would he still have to steal it? After Ling Han walked around, he gained a very great pleasant surprise. There were time cultivation chambers here. What was their use? The time inside would be accelerated to a much faster rate than outside. One day inside, and no matter what you were doing, you could save endless time. For example, concocting an alchemical pill would normally need 10 days, but inside, it would only require 5 days, 3 days, or even 1 day. Ling Han made some detailed inquiries. The time cultivation chamber here only had 4 acceleration effects: 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and 5 days, which meant that time could be sped up by 2 to 5 times. It could not be helped. This was only the first level area, and it was rumored that there were better time cultivation chambers further upwards, such as 10 times, 20 times, and 30 times. The strongest could reach 100 times, and only the 5th level had that. Furthermore, it was not something that one could make use of just by paying for it. The more the time was accelerated, the more resources it would expend. To say nothing of 10 times or 100 times, merely accelerating the time by 2 times, one would have to pay a star stone for each day. And for 3 times, it would be 2 star stones, 4 times would be 5 star stones, and 5 times was 10 star stones. In terms of quality to price ratio, acceleration by 2 times was the most worthwhile. Acceleration by 3, 4 times was also extremely favored, and acceleration by 5 times was a privilege that belonged to the rich. If Ling Han wanted to comprehend Tao, it was still the reincarnation tree that was better. At the beginning, 1 day was equivalent to a year, already accelerating time by over 300 times. What more now, when the acceleration rate had reached more than 3 million times? But in terms of alchemy, the reincarnation tree was of no help at all. After he found out that there was something like the time cultivation chamber, he immediately became very interested. Xiang Yin had once said that he could only concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills after 10 years, but with the help of the time cultivation chamber, he could shrink this time down to 2 years. And if Ling Han went to the 2nd level, he could reduce this time even further. He immediately made his decision. First, he would apply for entry to the 2nd level, and at the same time, he would concoct pills here. When his application was approved, he would go to the 2nd level. Time could not be wasted. Then, he would only have to concoct a cauldron of pills and stun the masses. Naturally, there would be grandmasters of alchemy stepping out to admire a prodigy like him, and it would be a natural turn of events for him to enter further into the 3rd level, the 4th level, and so on. With the reincarnation tree for comprehension, and added with the full acceleration of the time cultivation chamber, Ling Han did not believe that he could not become an outstanding alchemist in a short period of time. Let's go. He and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden then headed towards the time cultivation chamber. There was only one place that had it in this whole 1st level, and that was in this commercial area, which was not far. The two of them soon arrived at their destination. It was not of much use to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. She wanted to advance to the severing mundane tier, and would need accumulation over endless time, and the reincarnation tree was the true key for that. Otherwise, even acceleration by 100 times was not enough. She had only accompanied Ling Han here to take a look, and later she would enter into the Black Tower. For all eternity, Ling Han read the signboard outside this time cultivation chamber. This was a very large courtyard, and was separated into several hundred cultivation chambers. A profligate young master wouldn't come out and have some ideas about me, right? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden joked. She knew Ling Han's trait as a magnet for trouble. He was constantly drawing trouble. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "There's no harm in taking a look." The two of them entered the courtyard. There was a place selling tickets. At the entrance, every cultivation chamber could only be opened with its specialized seal. Dear two customers, what acceleration rate of cultivation chamber would you like? I suggest you choose one with 3 times acceleration rate. The quality to price ratio and practical effects are the best, the ticket vendor said very encouragingly. Every individual that came was a customer. 5 times, and we'll take it for a month first. Ling Han drew out 300 star stones and handed them over. He had no shortage of money. Sure. After the ticket vendor took the star stones, he examined them slightly, then handed Ling Han a seal and said, "Customer, please keep this well. The number for your cultivation chamber is 501. Coincidentally, this is the final cultivation chamber with 5 times acceleration rate. Let me give you a kind reminder. Each cultivation chamber can only allow one person to enter. The moment a second person appears, that cultivation chamber would automatically close, and it will be considered as you having forfeited the remaining time." Ling Han nodded. He had long since known this rule. This was to prevent someone from using a spatial god tool to bring a large group of people in. He was just about to leave when he saw a young man bustling over in a run. The latter exclaimed, "Give me a 5 times acceleration rate cultivation chamber." Chapter 1854. It really was not me drawing trouble. Chapter 1854. It really was not me drawing trouble. 5 times acceleration rate cultivation chamber? The ticket vendor shook his head. There's none left. The last one has just been rented out. As he said that, he cast a look at Ling Han. Ling Han suddenly had a thought. Could it be that a melodramatic event was going to happen again? That young man turned to look at Ling Han, and his expression was all smiles as he asked, "This brother, could you sublet this cultivation chamber to me? I can offer you 10% more star stones." Ling Han smiled. At first, he had thought that this guy would throw around his wealth and use 10 times the star stones to crush him, yet the result was actually just an additional 10%. However, precisely because of this, he could tell that this character was no profligate. Otherwise, this guy would definitely be the pettiest profligate in the world. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I do not wish to sublet it." That young man was very anxious and determinedly kept on bargaining with him, hoping that Ling Han could agree, yet was tactfully refused. He did not threaten Ling Han and said what would happen to him if he did not oblige, or something along those lines, though. Ling Han was actually slightly proud. This time, no conflict had happened. This seemed to be the first time in history, right? Not bad. This was a matter worth drinking to. Seeing his expression, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden involuntarily covered her mouth and laughed. She naturally understood what Ling Han was thinking, but this husband of hers would actually be proud because of such a matter, which was proof enough of how astonishing his halo of trouble was. "Zhu Jin, are you done?" A voice filled with loftiness rang out, and a young man walked over. He was clearly walking towards the other young man, but as he walked, his eyes passed over the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and he could no longer turn his gaze away. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden showed a hint of displeasure and leaned her body slightly towards Ling Han, using Ling Han's body to block the other's gaze. The first young man's name was Zhu Jin. He showed a hint of awkwardness, and turning towards the other young man, said, "Young Master Yu, I'm really sorry. The last 5 times acceleration chamber has just been rented out." The young man that was called Young Master Yu cast a gaze full of suspicion at Zhu Jin and asked, "Hey, you aren't just trying to save money and deliberately lying to me, are you? How could I dare to?" Zhu Jin rubbed his forehead, but there was no sweat. "If Young Master Yu does not believe me, you can ask the staff here." The ticket vendor was cooperative. Though he did not recognize this Young Master Yu, he still said, "That's right, Young Master Yu. The last 5 times acceleration rate cultivation chamber has been rented to this customer. Why don't you rent a 4 times acceleration rate cultivation chamber instead? The actual effects are not much different." "Rubbish." Young Master Yu immediately rebuked, the spit from his mouth almost splashing onto Zhu Jin's face. "I, Lu Yu, will either not use any at all, or I will use the best. Otherwise, how would I be able to face others when I return to Blue Eternity City?" After blustering around for a while, his eyes focused on Ling Han. "You, hand over your cultivation chamber to me, and however much money you want, you can go and find that guy." He pointed at Zhu Jin, a hint of pride in his expression. This was shown deliberately for the benefit of Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. How about it? I am awesome, right? I have a lackey that I can order around as I like, and he will give me money as long as I ask for it. Ling Han sighed. He had really thought that he could have a normal experience this time, and would not attract trouble, but reality proved that it was easy to dodge an open attack, but hard to guard against despicable people. He had again encountered a despicable character. Zhu Jin got a scare. Though he was slightly well off, he definitely could not hold up to such an exorbitant demand. He hurriedly laughed and said, "Please don't joke around, young master you. My friend, do me a favor, all right, and I'll give you 30% more of star stones." Zhu Jin, how could you be so petty? Don't make this beauty laugh at you, and don't make me lose face. Lu Yu humphed, appearing to be very displeased. To bargain like this in front of a beauty, couldn't you be a little more generous? Zhu Jin grimaced. He was only the young master of a small clan, and he was deliberately escorting Lu Yu around this time to curry favor with him. That was because the Zhu clan wanted to get some business from the Lu clan. But Lu Yu was putting on airs here in front of a beauty and was just moving his mouth, while what Zhu Jin was paying was actual money. With how small the Zhu clan was, how could they hold up to such exorbitant expense? Young Master Yu, the 4 times acceleration rate cultivation chambers really are not much different, and I can rent for a longer time too, he said courteously to Lu Yu. Humph, then what about my pride? Lu Yu's expression was filled with arrogance. He was practically raising his head so high his nostrils were facing Zhu Jin. Don't forget, it is not just your Zhu clan. There is still the Jin clan, Ma clan, and Cheng clan, and they are all cordially entertaining me. If you can't bear to part with a bit of money, there will be others who can. Zhu Jin could only grimace once more, and turned to Ling Han and said, "Friend, I am really sorry, but could we negotiate a bit? I am willing to compensate you with double the amount." This time, he had really spent a lot of money. He could only pray that Ling Han had not rented for too long a period of time. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden could not bear to see Lu Yu's arrogance, and also sympathized with how Zhu Jin was acting so humble. Turning to Ling Han, she said, "Why don't we just sublet it to him then?" In any case, Ling Han had already applied for qualification to enter into the 2nd level. He had come here only for the experience, so subletting and using a 4 times acceleration rate chamber instead would not have too much effect. At first, there was definitely no way that Ling Han would give way for someone like Lu Yu, but with a soft plea from his wife like this, and Zhu Jin had been polite all this while too his heart softened, and thus he said, "Fine then, I'll let you have it." "Many thanks, many thanks." Zhu Jin hurriedly bowed extremely low, offering his grateful thanks. Lu Yu saw this and scoffed, saying, "So after bargaining for so long, you are just a greedy man. Pay, who do you think you are, to put on a pretense of reservedness in front of me? Brat, come here and kneel in thanks for allowing you to make a good profit." Ling Han had stretched out his hand halfway to hand over the seal, but when he heard this, he became furious and suddenly withdrew his hand. This time, it was definitely not his halo of trouble, but rather this kind of trash was indeed asking to be beaten. "So how cheap could you get? I have already let you have the cultivation chamber, so you just proudly go since you already have the upper hand. But you insist on being cheap and asking for a beating, eh?" Ling Han set his eyes on Lu Yu and said, "Swallow the words that you have said." Yet Lu Yu was determined to cause trouble, though it was not because he disliked Ling Han, but rather for the sake of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Though the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had not advanced into the severing mundane tier, which decreased her charms, she was an exquisite beauty, after all. There were at most only 100 that could match her beauty in the whole Alchemy city. This seemed to be a large number, but just how many people were there in a 4-star city, and how many elites were there? Lu Yu could only look up at any single one of them, swallow his saliva, and then let his imagination roam in his head. But now, an exquisite beauty had actually appeared at the 1st level. What did this mean? He was completely qualified to pluck this beautiful bloom for himself. Ling Han? Who did he think he was? Just a country bumpkin, and he thought he could contest with him over a woman. Seeing Ling Han choose to confront him directly, Lu Yu was not angered, but rather pleased. With a comparison like this, only then would his superiority be presented clearly. "Oh, You want me to apologize? Lu Yu was very arrogant, slanting a sideways glance at Ling Han. Just who do you think you are? What qualifies you for that? Chapter 1855. Chapter 1855. Think I'm made of clay? Ling Han broke into a grin, turned to look at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and asked, Feng, my wife, can you tolerate that? No, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said with loathing. This Lu Yu kept using shifty eyes to peer at her, which made her feel disgusted. Ling Han shook his head and said, Neither can I. He took a step forwards and walked towards Lu Yu. Hey, we can discuss things politely. Don't damage a good relationship. Zhu Jin hurriedly jumped out to mediate the conflict. He was a businessman, and amiability made you rich. Furthermore, it was indeed Lu Yu who was too unconscientious in this matter. They had already kindly allowed him to have the cultivation chamber, so why did he still have to be so imperious? Did he really think that the other was made of clay and could be squeezed and molded as he liked? Zhu Jin, get lost. Lu Yu said aggressively and disdainfully declared, Through all the years in my life, this is the first time I have encountered someone that dares to think of making me apologize. Ling Han gave a light push, and Zhu Jin was already pushed to the side. He stretched out a hand to grab Lu Yu. Alchemy City had its laws. Fighting was not forbidden, but murder was definitely not allowed off course. You could completely commit murder deep in the mountains and forests as long as there were no witnesses. Ordinarily, as long as the person who had died was not someone too important, and there was no one bringing a lawsuit, Alchemy City couldn't be bothered to care. And there was another factor. Unless it was the inferior side that had taken the initiative to provoke the other, elites were strictly forbidden from making a move on those weaker than them. Because there were too many forces in Alchemy City, if a junior from any clan was beaten and the seniors ran out in search of revenge, wouldn't the whole city be in complete chaos? Thus, the matters of juniors would be solved amongst juniors. And Ling Han knew this, which was why he would move without reservations like this. As long as he did not beat Lu Yu to death, there wouldn't be any dividing soul-tier elites coming out to deal with him. How dare you? Lu Yu sneered. He delivered a palm strike towards Ling Han. Even though he was arrogant, as if he was a profligate young master, in truth, his natural talent in cultivation was not weak in the slightest. Otherwise, he couldn't have possibly become one of the heirs of the martial arts branch of the Lu clan. The Lu clan of Blue Eternity City was a noble clan of alchemy. Blue Eternity City was a subordinate force under the jurisdiction of Alchemy City. It was similarly filled with alchemists. There were a total of 2 Grand Elders in the Lu clan. One was focused on alchemy, but he was only a 1-star alchemist. Even so, a 1-star alchemist was actually already pretty amazing. The other Grand Elder specialized in martial arts and was a dividing soul-tier elite. After all, mere alchemy was not enough. They couldn't ask others for help whenever something came up. After all, only their own strength was the most reliable. And thus, there were 2 branches of the Lu clan. Those who had high natural talent in martial arts would be focused on cultivating martial arts, and those with natural talent in alchemy would focus on alchemy. For example, Lu Yu did not have any particularly bright talent in alchemy, but his natural talent in martial arts was not too bad. Naturally, he had entered into the martial arts branch. Because of Lu Yu's background, when he had come to Alchemy City for leisure this time, he was already targeted by many merchant noble clans wanting to obtain a new supply route of alchemical pills through connections with him. In the celestial realm, the supply of alchemical pills was always less than demand. Having so many revolving around him, contesting for his favor, Lu Yu's sense of superiority naturally exploded, and he had also taken the opportunity to make exorbitant demands and ask for benefits. For example, Blue Eternity City did not have this time cultivation chamber, and he was determined to try it out no matter what. And now, Ling Han actually dared make a move on him? Did he really think that just because Lu Yu had come from a clan of alchemists, his battle prowess was weak? You are really much too naive. Ling Han did not take it to heart at all. To say nothing of the fact that Lu Yu was not even a king tier, and was a weakling that had just advanced into the 2nd severance. So what if he was a 4th severance peak stage king tier? A palm descended, and Lu Yu was picked up by his neck. Woo! Lu Yu's limbs waved around madly in pain, but it was only pointless effort. In Ling Han's hands, he was nothing more than an infant. Friend, friend. Zhu Jin was almost jumping around in his anxiety. If Lu Yu was really wounded, not only would the Zhu clan be unable to do business with the Lu clan, if the Lu clan announced and demanded that other alchemists not do business with them either, then the Zhu clan would be in big trouble. But he could not get near Ling Han at all. Under the pressure of his aura, he could only pace back and forth 9 meters away. Only now did he know just how powerful Ling Han was. He couldn't help but sigh involuntarily in his heart. Lu Yu, why did you have to trifle with him for no reason like this? He had already allowed you to have the cultivation chamber, and you still insisted on being pompous, so who would be beaten if not you? But he couldn't just stand and watch, either, though he also quite disliked Lu Yu, wanting nothing more than for the latter to be beaten. It should not be done in front of his eyes at least. He continuously mediated from the sidelines, talking about Lu Yu's background, and hoping that he could convince Ling Han not to be reckless. How could Ling Han possibly give him any regard? He only set his eyes on Lu Yu, and said, with such a smelly mouth, "Did you grow up from eating mud?" The large black dog was not here, and he was not very creative, so he could only pick up a rock from the ground, crush it, then stuff the dirt into Lu Yu's mouth. Woo! Lu Yu wanted to spit it out, but could not do as he wished at all, and could only shake his head in pain. Actually, with his cultivation level, eating rocks was not a big deal. The problem was that this was too humiliating. Some have ended their cultivation and just happened to walk out. When they saw this scene, they involuntarily burst into laughter. Lu Yu's face instantly flushed bright red, and he felt as if those gazes from the spectators were like blades that pierced painfully into him. He had never, ever been so humiliated. He stared at Ling Han furiously. He vowed that he would kill this person, definitely. Heh, you still haven't learnt your lesson? Ling Han asked coldly. Pa, he delivered a slap over. Pooh. The rocks in Lu Yu's mouth instantly spewed out. Not only that, there were also a few broken teeth mixed in. One side of his face heavily swelled up, which showed how strong the force of this slap was. This naturally was because Ling Han had not used his full strength. Otherwise, Lu Yu's form and spirit would have long since been obliterated. Pong! Ling Han pressed down again, and Lu Yu's whole head sunk deeply into the tiles. Thankfully, severing mundane tier had too much time and origin power, so they could temper their physique whilst they cultivated, so their physique was strong enough. Otherwise, even if Lu Yu didn't die from this blow, he would be half dead. But even so, he was still seeing stars, and didn't even remember who he was anymore. His arms were drooping weakly, while his behind was raised high. This position was a little ambiguous. Ling Han couldn't help but think of the large black dog. If the large black dog was here, he would probably do that, right? He revealed a demon-like grin, and said, "Fenger, my wife, leave for a while." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded and entered into the black tower. Meanwhile, Ling Han drew out a bamboo pole. This was a saintly item. The 9-segment purple bamboo was astonishingly tough. Each segment would only grow in 100 million years, and it was extremely valuable. He snickered, and with a pu, he stabbed the bamboo pole into Lu Yu's behind. Even if Lu Yu's senses were already a little fuzzy at this point, the pain of having his A*S stabbed still forced him back to consciousness. He tried his best to shake his behind, wanting to expel the strange object, but how could it possibly go the way he wanted? Zhu Jin, meanwhile, was already completely dumbfounded. It was over. The young master of the Lu clan actually had his A*S stabbed under his escort. He would not be able to absolve himself of his responsibility either. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. Though Ling Han's current action had gone a little too far, could he really be blamed? If he was being honest, and if it was himself in the former's place, would he be even more furious? Why should Ling Han just take it lying down? He was not a saint. In the future, be a good man. There are many people in this world that have better strength and background than you. You should feel fortunate that this is Alchemy City. Otherwise, with my temper, I would have long since killed you." Ling Han patted the bamboo pole, and it shook under his hand, causing Lu Yu's screams of pain to lift a few notes higher. Chapter 1856, Finding a Helper. Chapter 1856, Finding a Helper. There was naturally no way that such a sudden event could affect Ling Han. Within the capacity of the game rules, he really was not afraid of anyone. The prerequisite was that he, too, had to be playing according to the rules and could not step too far out of bounds. If a dividing soul tier did not move out, who could do anything against him? Ling Han clapped his hands. This saintly material was considered as his gift. In any case, he definitely did not want it back any longer. Even if it was plucked out, it would stink for 10,000 years. He used the seal to open the cultivation chamber, entered, and then drew out his cauldron, getting ready to concoct alchemical pills. "Young Master Yu." Zhu Jin hurriedly approached to help Lu Yu up. He first helped him pull out his head from the tiles. My behind. My behind." Lu Yu wanted to rub his behind, but he had just stretched his hand back and was immediately assaulted by agonizing pain. He involuntarily pushed his waist forwards, but with a move like this, the bamboo pole also went in further, and his behind felt another bout of extreme pain. It just so happened that someone had walked out from the cultivation chamber. Seeing how there was a long bamboo pole stabbed into Lu Yu's *s, he was first stunned, and then immediately erupted with raucous laughter. He was definitely not the only one. The stone chamber doors beside him had also opened, and another person walked out. He similarly was stunned for a moment before laughing so hard that there were tears in his eyes. "Brother Ma, what is this man doing? He's a pervert that likes having his *s stabbed. What hardcore tastes." The two of them clearly knew each other. They should have come together to cultivate here, as only then could they exit at the same time. As they watched Lu Yu, they conversed and then walked outwards. When Lu Yu heard this, his face naturally turned dull red in color, and he felt as if his whole life had become dark and gray, without the slightest bit of brightness left. He gritted his teeth and said to Zhu Jin, "Bastard, quickly pull that thing out." Zhu Jin nodded and placed his hands on the bamboo pole. "Ow, ow, ow." Lu Yu called out quickly. With each slight tremble of the hand, his *s would be tortured another time. Zhu Jin suddenly drew out with force, and the bamboo pole was finally pulled out. Then, with a pu, an arrow of blood also sprayed out from Lu Yu's *s. "Ah!" Lu Yu screamed out again, but it was better to deal with painful things quickly. After this bamboo pole had been pulled out, though the pain he suffered was heart-piercing, and he felt a sudden moment of emptiness, he finally needed not suffer any more torture. He covered his behind with one hand, fire practically shooting from his eyes. His trousers had naturally been completely dyed crimson from blood. "Bastard, we are completely irreconcilable." "Young Master Yu, forget it," Zhu Jin advised. He was a native citizen of Alchemy City, and naturally was very clear about the laws of the city. Ordinarily speaking, if Lu Yu wanted to get his revenge, he could only find a severing mundane tier to take vengeance for him, or wait until Ling Han went into some desolate, remote location so he could send out a dividing soul tier instead. But from the strength that Ling Han had previously displayed, how many severing mundane tiers could actually be capable of suppressing him? It would probably have to be someone at king tier level, right? Zhu Jin was only a normal severance, and as he saw it, Ling Han definitely could not be a king tier. Otherwise, what did he mean by coming to the 5th level? And because Lu Yu was an outsider, the application to enter into the 2nd level had not been approved yet, and that was why he could only tour around in the 1st level. Otherwise, he would not have met Ling Han, either. Thus, though Ling Han's previous display was astonishing, Zhu Jin still thought that he could be suppressed by a king tier. The problem here was, how were they supposed to get a king tier to move out for them? To say nothing of the fact that he, Zhu Jin, definitely did not have that ability, Lu Yu similarly did not. "You get lost." Lu Yu pushed Zhu Jin aside, his expression filled with loathing. As he saw it, Zhu Jin had only wanted to watch him being humiliated. Otherwise, why hadn't he helped him just now? To offer a few words of advice so insincerely, who didn't know how to do this? Despicable. Zhu Jin wanted to make another attempt. After all, the Zhu clan was a merchant clan. Young Master Yu. Fuck, are you scramming or not? Lu Yu glared, feeling that Zhu Jin was repulsive, practically not so much better than Ling Han. He had suffered such a massive grievance, and he actually advised him to forget it? Fuck him. Did he think that he really had to depend on their Zhu clan? Humph, there were quite a number of clans fighting to express goodwill to him. It was only that he had been blind to actually choose a guy like this that was so cowardly and disloyal. Humph. With a flutter of his sleeve, he rushed out the doors. However, with him leaving like this, his behind was naturally shockingly painful, and his hands involuntarily came up to support himself. Then, with his legs clamped tightly together, he walked ahead in an incredibly awkward manner. However, a severing mundane tear was still a severing mundane tear after all. Even walking in such a manner, his speed was still incredibly fast. In an instant, he had disappeared without a trace. Zhu Jin couldn't help but sigh. He did not know how to react, but ultimately, he did not set off in pursuit any longer. He was also a man that had his pride. He had already repeatedly humbled himself, yet was only brushed off with a cold shoulder. He had really had enough. Lu Yu walked some distance away and involuntarily stopped, beginning to ponder. Whom should he find? Actually, he also knew the laws of Alchemy City. Thus, if the helper he found was not strong enough, that would actually be seeking his own humiliation. That's it. I'll find Sun Dong. His eyes lit up, and he clapped his hands. However, because of this action, it pulled on the muscles in his behind, causing him to yell out again. The passers-by on the streets all turned to look in his direction. Lu Yu hurriedly entered into his spatial god tool. Whatever the case, he had to change his clothes first. The Sun Clan's strength is very impressive in the first place, and Sundong is even known as the Little King tier, with a cultivation level of 4th Severance Peak stage. He is just a little proud, and not as obedient as the others, which was why I didn't seek him out. Hee. The Sun Clan is also a supporter of Holy Sun Lu Xianming. If Sundong is still unable to deal with that brat, his only option would definitely be to ask for help from Lu Xianming. If even Lu Xianming still can't do anything to that guy, then I'll yield. I'll go seek Sun Dong out now. Lu Yu exited the spatial god tool and walked all the way to a brothel in an incredibly awkward manner. Sun Clan was a 3-star force. Their main clan was at the 4th level. If Lu Yu wanted to find the Sun Clan, he had to first contact members of the Sun Clan and have the Sun Clan step out on his behalf to be able to bring him up to that level. But how could Lu Yu have so much time? Thankfully, this Sundong was most fond of frequenting brothels, and the prostitute on industry was best developed on the 5th level. In a whole year, there were at least 8 months that he had spent here. Thus, Lu Yu very proficiently found his way over. After all, he, too, had played around here for some time, so he knew his way around. The people in the brothel also recognized a big customer like him, and when they saw him enter, they all greeted him respectively. Hey, young Master Yu, why are you clamping your behind so tightly? It can't be that you played too wildly last night and got her at Ped, right? A woman approached him and used the silken handkerchief in her hand to lightly slap Lu Yu's chest. If this was any other time, Lu Yu would definitely laugh out loud and take the advantage of the opportunity to grope her breasts a bit, but now his rage was unbridled. Pa, he had delivered a slap right at that woman's face. Who are you saying has been or at Ped? He demanded sinisterly, feeling an urge to commit murder. Instantly, everyone fell silent out of fear, not daring to make the slightest noise. Ha 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 ha, Lu Yu, why are you in such a nasty mood? You really got her at Ped? Amidst a bout of loud laughter, a young man walked out, each of his arms slung around the shoulders of a woman in revealing clothing on either side. It was Sun Dong. Young Master Dong. Lu Yu hurriedly approached. In front of the other party, he did not dare to put on any airs at all. This was also the reason why he had not sought out Sun Dong previously, as he would not have any feeling of superiority. Chapter 1857. Here Comes Trouble. Chapter 1857. Here Comes Trouble. Lu Yu, it can't be that you were really our ped, right? Sun Dong paused. Looking at his awkward posture, it really looked like that was the case. After all, though he had never ped men before, he had played with a considerable number of women. Immediately, Lu Yu's face flushed red, and an incredibly furious expression flashed over his face. Ha 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 ha. Sun Dong suddenly burst into laughter, not giving the slightest consideration for Lu Yu's feelings. In the brothel, the others did not dare to laugh out loud. They all covered their mouths, suppressing their amusement with much difficulty. Lu Yu, I really couldn't tell that you were so hardcore with your games. Sun Dong sked. This naturally was not a compliment for the former. Lu Yu hurriedly said, Young Master Dong, you have misunderstood. I was bullied. What? It really was ARP? Sun Dong glanced over Lu Yu. Then, he released his grip on the two women. Walking to the latter's side, he pulled down Lu Yu's pants in a single move, and then inhaled sharply. Not only him, all the other people in the brothel were also stunned. Damn, this was too fierce, wasn't it? His *S was so severely wounded, so how big would that thing have to be? Fuck, and I thought mine was already big enough, but compared with this, it's still not good enough. Sun Dong felt hurt. Men would always be very concerned about this aspect. Though everyone practically would not have the opportunity to compare their sizes, when they had the chance for an unusual contest, they would still be unable to control themselves from comparing amongst themselves. Those women in the brothel were all astounded. With how thick that was, none of them could take it. It was definite that they would be destroyed. No. Lu Yu wanted to die already when having so many people look at him with such strange expressions. It's not human. No. My *S wasn't stabbed by anyone, but rather by a bamboo pole. Sun Dong faltered for a moment and then laughed out loud. He patted Lu Yu's shoulder and said, I have previously underestimated you. With you being such a wild player, you can follow me in future. I will accept you as my lackey. Young Master Dong, you have to avenge me. Lu Yu had abandoned his pride and explained all that had previously happened. However, he naturally would not say that it was he who had been overbearing at first, but had rather sketched over the details. The main focus of his explanation was the beauty of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and the tyrannical ways of Ling Han. Oh, Sun Dong was interested now. In this alchemy city, there is actually someone so arrogant? Also, are you sure that that woman is really as beautiful as you say? She can only be more beautiful than I have described. Lu Yu guaranteed. Sun Dong snapped his fingers and said, Come, take me there. Lu Yu was delighted and hurriedly led Sun Dong out the doors. However, when they had arrived, Ling Han had long since entered into the cultivation chamber. It should be known that this place was opened by powerful figures from the 4th level, or even the 5th level. Sun Dong would never dare to break open the doors to find Ling Han. Thus, when he made his careful inquiries and found out that Ling Han had rented the cultivation chamber for a month's time, he returned to have his fun at the brothel. He would come again after a month passed. In the cultivation chamber, Ling Han took out his cauldron and began to concoct alchemical pills. Though the lowest grade of celestial pill needed celestial medicine, it did not need a very large amount. Only a little bit of celestial medicine was needed as the main ingredient, while the rest could all use saintly medicine as supplementary ingredients. Of course, the more celestial medicine was included, the higher the grade of the completed pill would be. This was definite. Ling Han had just begun, so he naturally wouldn't use too much celestial medicine in a single attempt. He was destined to fail. He was only going to sum up his experience from failure and improve the success rate for the next attempt. After gathering the wealth of so many holy sons and holy daughters in the hidden dragon mystery realm, he really was quite rich at present. He had as many as 4 celestial medicines, and 3 of them had come from Zi Bingyun and Luo Qingfeng. As they were descendants of Celestial King tier-level forces, their wealth was indeed astonishing. However, celestial medicines also had different grades, which was something determined by their age. Furthermore, they also had different attributes. Time and space celestial medicines would definitely be much more valuable than others. A higher grade or lower grade was not so important. What was most important was that alchemical pills could be concocted from them. Ling Han took out a celestial medicine and carefully sliced off a piece. He tossed it into the cauldron, and then he immediately began pill concoction using the Nine Heavens flame as a heat source for the cauldron. Speaking of the conditions of pill concoction, Ling Han was stronger than 99% of alchemists because he had the Nine Heavens flame. The most important factor in pill concoction was flame control, and the Nine Heavens flame was one of the 9 great ancestral flames. No alchemist could possibly have better endowments than Ling Han. They could only match him, and furthermore, there could only be 8 at most that had matching conditions. And how many of them would be alchemists among them? Perhaps not even a single one. Boom! The Nine Heavens flame burned furiously. Ling Han continuously threw supplementary ingredients into the cauldron. There was no need for him to be stingy about this. Saintly medicine was really too cheap in the celestial realm. It could be found everywhere. After a month, the cauldron exploded. Failure. Ling Han stopped, entered into the Black Tower, and thought back over it underneath the reincarnation tree. The acceleration of time could not be overlapped with the reincarnation tree. However, since this was him reviewing a problem, it was definitely the reincarnation tree that was the better option. There is no problem with my methods. At most, I am only lacking practice a bit. The problem now instead is the cauldron. The Nine Heavens flame is too powerful, and the cauldron will not be able to withstand it. And if I still have to attend to the cauldron too, it will definitely increase the difficulty. I will have to divide part of my concentration. I have to get a better cauldron. Good tools are a prerequisite to the successful execution of a job. The people from ancient times were right. However, he did not have an excellent cauldron now, so Ling Han could only take out a cauldron again and continue his journey of alchemy. 2 months later, the cauldron exploded once more. Ling Han reviewed for a while and then started again. This time, he had failed after only half a month. Even if he was the alchemy emperor, if he wanted to advance into the level of celestial pill, his path was still covered with thorns. However, this did not discourage Ling Han. Instead, a strong fighting spirit rose up in him. It would be more interesting if there was a challenge. He tirelessly concocted alchemical pills. However, 5 months' time very soon passed, and the doors of the cultivation chamber automatically opened. 1 month has passed outside. My application to enter into the second level should be approved by now, and I can just go to the second level to access a cultivation chamber with a better time acceleration rate. In that way, I will have the certainty to become a celestial level alchemist in a year, or even less time than that. Ling Han was quite satisfied. After all, any 1-star alchemist would have to be troubled by this step for at least 10 million years' time. This speed of his was really astonishing, but who asked him to own the reincarnation tree? He rose up and left. However, he had just walked out the doors when he saw that there were 2 people standing guard outside. Upon a single look, he could tell that they were there for him. Lu Yu. Ling Han did not recognize the other person, nor was he interested to find out. Brat. The moment Lu Yu spotted Ling Han, he immediately began gritting his teeth. Even by now, his A*S hadn't completely recovered yet. Who asked Ling Han to have used a sliver of power of regulation when he had stabbed him? At least for a few months, he would have to grit his teeth in pain every time he squatted. Ling Han glanced at him and couldn't help but smilingly ask, "Is Mr. N**S all right?" "All right, your sister. You actually have the nerve to ask." Lu Yu was so furious he wanted to commit murder. However, he knew that he was no match for Ling Han, and hurriedly said to Sun Dong, "Young Master Dong, just see. Isn't this brat so arrogant that everyone is below his notice? Even if you are here, he is also still arrogant, and completely does not take you seriously at all." Sun Dong was wanton and unrestrained. Though he was wearing long robes, His chest was broadly exposed, showing a dense growth of chest hair. He glanced coldly at Ling Han. "Brat, are you looking down on me?" Chapter 1858, Tao Regulating Pill. Chapter 1858, Tao Regulating Pill. Ling Han knew that Lu Yu was deliberately making trouble, but the problem here was that he really did not have the habit of humbling himself to please others. "Have I trifled with you? Then why should I have to treat you with a humble attitude?" There was nothing that could be done. That was who Ling Han was. He similarly slanted a glance sideways at Sun Dong and asked, "Do I need to look up to or down on you?" To be honest, he really had not taken the other to heart. By now, the only people he could consider as a match for him would have to be the holy sons and holy daughters that had walked out from great sects that were at least at the level of fifth heaven celestial king tier and above. For someone like Sun Dong, he would only be insta-killed in his hands. Even looking down on him was considered bestowing a very great worth on him. Sun Dong faltered for a moment and then laughed loudly. He clapped his hands and exclaimed, "Indeed, you are arrogant enough. I heard that you have a wife that is quite pretty. Let her come out so I can take a look." This was a complete provocation. "So what? I was completely treating your wife like a woman from the brothel." Ling Han raised a brow, and his expression became sinister. "Did you not see this good example?" He pointed at Lu Yu. "It was because his mouth was too filthy that I had beaten him black and blue. If you don't immediately swallow the stuff that you have just spat out, then just wait to become exactly like him." Sun Dong laughed loudly and said, "Brat, you want to RP me too? Just for that, I will have to find 80 to 100 strong men to make you cry." "Young Master Dong, why don't we find some other creatures like wild hogs or bears?" Lu Yu put forward plans and ideas from the sidelines. His *S was still hurting, and great hatred filled his heart. "This is not a bad idea." Sun Dong rubbed his hands, willing to take his idea on. "Just crouch down obediently." He moved and grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han did not counter. When Sun Dong's attack was close to reaching him, he shot a glare at him. A terrifying murderous aura surged out, and Sun Dong's whole body instantly became as cold as ice, and his movements slowed. It should be known that Ling Han had cultivated heaven's might from the lightning in the first place, and only king tiers could resist that. Now, he had also cultivated regulation of slaughter, so how terrifying was that? Sun Dong felt his heart clench. The icy coldness spread throughout his body. To say nothing of continuing his attack, even standing had already used up all his energy and willpower. Otherwise, he would definitely have knelt down by now. He was almost scared out of his wits. How could there be someone so strong? Though Sun Dong was not a king tier, he was only a step away from king tier level. But he actually couldn't even manage to fight in front of Ling Han. Just what kind of gap was there between the two of them? RP, RP, RP your sister." Ling Han was furious and kicked Sun Dong into a crouching position on the ground. "I cultivated my moral character and behavior, planning to keep a low profile for a while, yet all of you insist on stepping on my nerves. Do you think I am an easy target to bully?" These really were honest words. This time, he had no plans to crush any profligate, and merely wanted to quietly concoct alchemical pills and become famous in this way. From there, he could draw out Commander Guan and continue his journey to Rock Palace. This time, he really had been modest enough. In fact, he had even almost given up the cultivation chamber, and what happened? Stepping on one was not enough. Here came another that insisted that he step on him. Did they think that he would not step on them? Shwa, a bamboo pole appeared once more, and with a PU, it was stabbed into Sun Dong *S. Ah! Sun Dong immediately released a tragic cry. He had violated many people's *S before, but it was his first time having his *S violated, and furthermore, it was with something as thick as a bamboo pole. Lu Yu's face had turned green from watching from the sidelines. At that time, he had only felt pain, but when he personally saw something so thick sink into Sun Dong's *S, he couldn't help but feel his *S clenching as well. Even now, his injuries hadn't recovered yet. "And you," Ling Han grabbed Lu Yu over. I already spared you once, but you still insist on being beaten. You still haven't learned your lesson even having been beaten. Have you gotten addicted to being pierced? Fine then, I will oblige with your wishes. Pooh! Another bamboo pole was stabbed into Lu Yu's *S. Ling Han clapped his hands. These two people were kneeling on the ground, their bottoms raised high. The two bamboo poles trembled very rhythmically, causing him to feel as if he had created a work of art. Sigh. If he stayed too long with the large black dog, it was inevitable that he was going to be influenced. Ling Han walked out of the cultivation chamber and rushed to the administration office of the first level. He had submitted his application here and also had to collect his approval here. There would be a plaque that granted him entry, and he could enter the second level with that. What, it was not approved? He looked at the investigator, appearing to be very shocked. That was because he was in the severing mundane tier, and this application should only be mere formality. How could it possibly be rejected? You have come at a coincidental time. Grandmaster Zi Cheng has just concocted a Tao-regulating pill. He is a rather eccentric man and never sells pills. Thus, he has also offered this Tao-regulating pill as a reward to be contested over by all the severing mundane tier cultivators in the whole city, that investigator said. By now, every level is undergoing a selection process. To prevent some from having failed the selection in this level and register again after they enter into the second level, the application for entry into the second level for severing mundane tiers has been temporarily put on hold. What a coincidence. Ling Han asked, may I ask what effects this Tao-regulating pill has? Even if I tell you, it is of no use. There are a great many people that covet this precious pill, and it is absolutely nothing that you can obtain. Hee. Do you know the eternal prosperity celestial king? This investigator was definitely a chatterbox. He already said that it was useless to tell him, yet still talked so much. Ling Han exercised patience and smilingly replied, no. You don't know? Good. That investigator had even more time to show off and said, speaking of the eternal prosperity celestial king, that is truly a powerful overlord. You know how there are 9 heavens in celestial king tier, and every step is like ascending the heavens? Ling Han was exasperated and said, that I do know. Hee. That eternal prosperity celestial king is an 8th heaven celestial king. The eternal prosperity sect has existed throughout the ages and has perpetually been prosperous, the investigator said. Ling Han felt a little frustrated. I asked you what are the effects of the Tao-regulating pill, yet you were talking to me about the eternal prosperity celestial king. Just what kind of thoughts are going through your head? This time, even the Eternal Prosperity Palace has sent an important figure here, and that is one of the 4 heavenly kings under Holy Sun Yin Xinlu, Zhao Qingfeng. He has come here to obtain the Tao-regulating pill under the command of Holy Sun Yin Xinlu. Say, even Zhao Qingfeng, Lord Zhao, is going to make a move, so how could you possibly obtain the Tao-regulating pill? The investigator said. So after beating so much around the bush, Ling Han finally understood what he meant. Firstly, there was no hope for him, and secondly, it was clear how coveted the Tao-regulating pill was. Even the Holy Sun from an 8th heaven celestial king, tier-level force, had sent someone here. 8th heaven celestial king. A fighting spirit rose up in Ling Han. The Holy Sun of an 8th heaven celestial king, tier-level force. He should be able to rank amongst the strongest in the world, and that was the kind of top-tier prodigy that the large black dog had talked about. However, the prodigy that had been nurtured by an 8th heaven celestial king tier-level force might not be capable of ranking above average, but there should not be any problem for him to be in the average ranks. Too bad. The person who had come was only one of Yin Xinlu's subordinates. Ling Han asked further, and only then did the investigator explain the effects of the Tao-regulating pill. As it turned out, this celestial pill could strengthen one's Tao foundation, and for a normal severance, it was practically useless, but for prodigies, this was a precious treasure. To use an analogy, cultivation was like piling up stones. Prodigies could use the same number of stones to build higher, but it was also because of this that their foundations were not strong enough, so the tower could possibly sway and be on the verge of collapse. If they built even higher, there would be risk of complete collapse. The Tao-regulating pill could strengthen one's foundations further, and from there, he could continue to climb higher. Precisely because of these effects, even Yin Xinlu was tempted. However, it was unknown whether he considered himself too important, and so had not come personally, or had been detained by other matters, and had thus sent out only a subordinate. However, since Ling Han now knew, he was determined to take this Tao-regulating pill for his own. Chapter 1859, The Invincible Qingfeng. Chapter 1859, The Invincible Qingfeng. It was said that after Ling Han left, Sun Dong and Lu Yu slowly woke up from the pain. The moment they woke up, they discovered their *ses were in agonizing pain. Then, the moment they turned around, they could see how the other looked, and then they could imagine how they themselves looked. Both their faces turned green. All around them, there were also others watching the show. Those who were watching the excitement naturally would not think it a big deal. The spectators conversed spiritedly, and their words made Sun Dong and Lu Yu want nothing more than for a crack which they could crawl into to appear. The two of them hurriedly plucked out the bamboo poles and fled. After running some distance, only then did they enter into their spatial god tool. They took out new clothes which they put on, and carelessly used some medicine to temporarily treat their injury. Very quickly, the two of them reappeared again. Lu Yu's expression naturally was even uglier. He had already had his *s pierced twice. If this matter spread back to Blue Eternity City, how would he be able to face others in the future? Sun Dong was not much better. He gripped his fists tightly, his expression livid. Since childhood, he had never experienced such a great humiliation. However, he had only had a single exchange with Ling Han, and he already understood that he was far from being a match for Ling Han. In fact, he was not able to withstand the power of a single look from the latter. Humph, just because you are a king tier, you think you can bully me? Sun Dong forced out through gritted teeth. This was a 4-star city, and there was definitely not just one king tier here. As he saw it, Ling Han should be the holy son of some great 3-star sect, and had deliberately disguised himself as a weakling to prey on the strong. However, this time, you have definitely met your match, Sun Dong muttered coldly, his eyes sharp and cold. It is true that I am no match for you, but I am the follower of Holy Sun Lu. You bullied me to this extent. Lord Holy Sun will definitely seek revenge on my behalf. Young Master Dong. Lu Yu approached. He also hated Ling Han very much, and now they were united against a common enemy. Scram! Sun Dong shot a kick over. If it were not for this guy, how could he have experienced the tragedy that befell his *s? With a flutter of his sleeve, he turned and left. He was determined to avenge this deep hatred. Young Master Dong. Young Master Dong. Lu Yu chased for a few steps, but was left farther and farther behind. Thus, he could only stop. However, he was not too disappointed. That was because he was already sure that Sun Dong would definitely seek revenge. Since that was the case, he only had to take some notice and watch the show when the time came. Sun Dong ran all the way and arrived at the location of the transfer formation. After showing a unique transfer pass, he directly went to the 4th level. The Sun Clan was a 3-star force. Their main branch was at the 4th level. As he was the direct heir of the Sun Clan, going to the 4th level was naturally just a matter of course for him. Going by his routine path, he soon arrived at the abode of Lu Xianming. This was a massive mountain manor, with mountains on one side and water on the other. Sun Dong did not have the heart to admire the beautiful scenery on his way there. He was one of Lu Xianming's trusted aides, and did not even have to wait to be announced, but directly arrived in the living room. When he arrived here, he lightened his steps, and his expression also became more serious. He stretched his head over and looked, and saw that Lu Xianming was presently drinking tea with guests. There were a total of 3 guests, 2 male and 1 female. The only woman was indescribably beautiful, and had a kind of noble bearing such that others could only dare to stare at her from a distance. The 2 men each had an aggressive charm, and could be considered as dragons among men. These were definitely the holy sons and holy daughter of great sects, because they were worthy of being received personally by Lu Xianming. Even the heirs of 3-star forces or 4-star forces could not possibly achieve this. Alchemists were in a loftier position compared to others. Only the heirs of Celestial King tier-level sects would require Lu Xianming to personally receive them, to say nothing of the fact that he was presently only a holy son. Even if he became the chairperson in the future, he would still have to maintain an appropriate level of respect for Celestial King tier-level forces. Of course, Celestial King tier-level forces would also not offend an alchemist for no reason. It was only a win-win situation if they had mutual respect. Sun Dong carefully and quietly walked in. He could be arrogant and willful in the first level, but here, he had to present a demeanor of absolute respect. However, after he had taken a few steps, he shockingly discovered that there was actually a fourth guest. He was first taken aback, and then was astonished. With his strength, he actually discovered that there was a fifth person in the hall after so long had passed. At this moment, that fourth guest seemed to have guessed his thoughts and turned his head slightly to look at him. Immediately, Sun Dong's mind was completely blank. Sun Dong! Sun Dong! A voice seemed to be heard from a very far distance away. After a while, Sun Dong suddenly came back to his senses and realized that it was Lu Xianming that was calling him. He involuntarily experienced a cold shiver and felt a coldness rise up from the very soles of his feet, spreading out throughout his whole body. If that person just now had made a move on him, he would definitely have been dead before he even knew it. Too strong. Only one look, and he had completely lost all battle prowess. This made him recall Ling Hanhe had also been like this. One look, and he had been able to win without even fighting. If this lord was willing to step out for him, then even if it would not be a sure victory over Ling Han, he would be able to match him at least. Holy Sun! Sun Dong hurriedly paid his greetings respectfully. What is it? Lu Xianming frowned slightly. At present, he was entertaining important guests, yet Sun Dong was just standing there like an idiot, which made him feel very embarrassed. Sun Dong gritted his teeth and explained what had previously happened. From his mouth, Lu Xianming naturally became a supremely arrogant character that did not give Lu Xianming any face at all, causing him to suffer inhuman torture. Holy Sun, you have to give justice for my guess. He fell onto the ground, sobbing pathetically. Lu Xianming's face involuntarily turned dark. What do you mean by giving justice for your guess? Don't speak in such an ambiguous way. Those who were not in the know would think that there was something suspicious between the two of them. Yet that fifth person that had been overlooked laughed loudly and said, "Is he really that strong? I would like to take a look for myself." Lu Xianming smiled and then replied, "If Brother Qingfeng moves, who will be able to block you within the severing mundane tier?" These words caused the other three guests to show expressions of displeasure. Who were they? Any one of them was a holy son or holy daughter of a great celestial king tier-level sect, and had surpassed king tier level and reached the level of emperor tier. Yet Lu Xianming actually said that the other party had no one that could match him in the severing mundane tier. What position was he putting them in? Heh, we've conversed for so long, but we have not asked the name of this guest? A holy son directed the question at Brother Qingfeng. His name was Bao Cheng. Lu Xianming laughed loudly and interrupted. It's all my fault. I haven't managed to introduce him yet. My three guests, Brother Qingfeng's surname is Zhao, and he is one of the 4 heavenly kings under Yin Xianlu, Holy Sun Yin. He is known as Invincible Qingfeng. Yin Xianlu. The 3 holy sons and holy daughter simultaneously showed an expression of shock and felt a fear that rose up from deep within their hearts. They were all holy sons and a holy daughter, but they didn't even have the right to carry Yin Xianlu's shoes. There were 9 heavens in Celestial King tier, and every single step forward was as difficult as ascending the heavens. Not only was the hierarchy among Celestial Kings strict, even the descendants that they had respectively nurtured adhered to a strict hierarchy. These 3 holy sons and holy daughter all belonged to a first heaven Celestial King tier-level force, but as for Yin Xianlu, 8th heaven Celestial King tier-level force. They had heard too much about Yin Xianlu, and a great many of his tales could even become legends. Just take, for example, Yin Xianlu's origins. He had been discovered by the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King on the Celestial Path, and thus the latter had carried him back to the Eternal Prosperity sect. He became the personal disciple of Eternal Prosperity Celestial King, and was given the name of Xianlu. And what was the Celestial Path? If one wanted to transcend ascending origin tier and become a Celestial King, he would have to walk on the Celestial Path. And Yin Xianlu was actually on the Celestial Path right from birth. Just how astonishing was that? This was a true prodigy. As he developed and grew, he had the good reputation of being invincible. Any prodigy would have to lower his head in front of him, and even king tiers would have to kneel. He was strong enough to drive others to despair. However, they indeed admired Yin Xianlu very much, but to say that even one of his subordinates could actually be invincible in the severing mundane tier, wasn't that a joke? Chapter 1860, Suppressing a Holy Sun with Just a Flip of the Hand. Chapter 1860, Suppressing a Holy Sun with Just a Flip of the Hand. Invincible is not mere empty words, Bao Cheng said slowly. If it was Yin Xianlu that had come, then he definitely could only admit his inferiority, but Zhao Qingfeng? That was only one of Yin Xianlu's lackeys, and he was qualified to say that there was no one that could match him in the severing mundane tier? What a joke! Then what were holy sons and holy daughters like them? Trash? Zhao Qingfeng cast a look at Bao Cheng, showed a taunting smile, and said, "You do not yield?" "Of course I don't." To say nothing of Bao Cheng, even the other holy son and holy daughter's expressions were filled with defiance. "You are but a mere lackey, and you actually dare raise your head in front of us? You think that just because you have followed Yin Xianlu, you are a monarch tier?" "Of course not," Bao Cheng humphed. "The two of you also do not yield?" Zhao Qingfeng looked towards the other two. Humph! This holy son and holy daughter both appeared to be very prideful. It was not worth their while to fall to the same level as a mere servant. "If you do not yield, then come battle me. The reason I have come this time is to thrash such trash like you people," Zhao Qingfeng declared without the slightest reservations, not giving any face at all to these holy sons and holy daughter. Bao Cheng and his companions were naturally furious. "A mere follower like you actually dares speak to us like this way? What gives you the right?" Zhao Qingfeng smiled slightly, the smile that turned up the corners of his lips filled with mockery, and he said, "Do you think that just anyone can be the Lord Holy Sun's subordinate? With your strength? Heh, you're not even worthy of picking his shoes." Shua, Bao Cheng and the others stood up simultaneously, their faces filled with rage. "Fuck, we admit that we are no match for Yin Xianlu, yet you actually say that we are not even worthy of playing second fiddle or picking up his shoes. You are looking down on us too much, aren't you?" "Hee hee, some people are in serious need of a lesson." Bao Cheng walked towards Zhao Qingfeng and crooked a finger. "Come, see how I shall beat you to submission." Zhao Qingfeng sneered, "You really have a lot of rubbish to say." It was true that Bao Cheng was very much angered, and even the other holy son and holy daughter showed expressions of fury. That was because they were treated with the same level of disdain. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaming had absolutely no intention of stepping out to play mediator, and merely sipped his tea with a smile. Sun Dong's heart was filled with excitement as he watched. He had not thought that Zhao Qingfeng was so awesome. By himself alone, he actually dared to challenge three great holy sons and holy daughter, and more importantly, the former had said that he was going to deal with Ling Han. He naturally hoped that Zhao Qingfeng was as strong as possible and could crush Ling Han without much effort. Zhao Qingfeng and Bao Cheng walked outside the main hall and then flew into the air. The space in this fourth level was naturally protected by formations, and with their strength as severing mundane tiers, there was no way that they could destroy this protective formation. Fighting in midair was only so that the shock waves from their battle would not raise the structures here. "Make your move." Bao Cheng conducted himself with dignity. He was a holy son, while the other party was only a subordinate of Yin Xianlu. He had no wish to damage his own reputation. Zhao Qingfeng bared his teeth in a grin. He suddenly made his move. Xiao, his figure suddenly disappeared from his original position. Then, he appeared in front of Bao Cheng and shot out a punch. Regulations of space. Bao Cheng grunted, his expression shifting slightly. He had not thought that Zhao Qingfeng had actually grasped the rare regulations of space. This was a little unexpected. However, he was a holy son, after all, and was an emperor tier himself. Though he was surprised, he did not panic. Using his forefinger and middle finger like a blade, he sliced out towards Zhao Qingfeng. Light flickered at the tips of his fingers, exuding a metallic air. He was an acute metal divine fetus. The moment he activated the power of his bloodline, every single part of his body could be used like an indestructible weapon. His strike was strong enough to split heaven and earth apart. Yet Zhao Qingfeng was unafraid, and his punch still descended, clashing with Bao Cheng's strike head-on. Boom! In a clash of power, regulations exploded. This was a conflict between the Tao of two elites. Xiao, Bao Cheng was immediately sent flying backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His whole body was enshrouded in a shield of light that seemed close to collapsing. Zhao Qingfeng, on the other hand, was calm and composed, and had not retreated even half a step. This scene caused the expressions of the other holy son and holy daughter to change greatly. Too strong, too powerful, so much so that even Bao Cheng was defeated with a single strike. Admittedly, this was because Bao Cheng had underestimated his opponent slightly and had not expected that the latter was an expert in regulations of space, and was thus compelled into a head-on exchange of blows. But it should be known that he should be invincible among his peers as a holy son, and it would only be they that would be suppressing others. But now, he had actually been defeated in a head-on confrontation. Was this really a follower? He was stronger than even a holy son. The moment Zhao Qingfeng made his move, his whole aura immediately underwent a drastic change. Previously, he was indifferent. Though he was also very arrogant, his attitude leaned more towards contempt. But after he made his move, he became incredibly cold and ruthless, exuding a killing intent that made one shiver. Xiao, with another flash of his figure, he chased swiftly after Bao Cheng. Then, he made his move again, and shot out a punch that turned into a boundless descending mountain. Bao Cheng could only take it head-on, but the result of taking it head-on was him throwing up blood madly again, and the shield of light on him completely dispersing. In an exchange of merely over a dozen moves, Bao Cheng was forcefully blasted down from the skies. He coughed up blood repeatedly, his vitality dropping to rock bottom. Zhao Qingfeng was not ruthless. Crossing his arms behind back, he looked towards the other holy son and holy daughter and asked, "Are you trash still unyielding?" The two of them bore expressions of bitterness and swallowed with extreme difficulty, but were completely unable to refute his words. To become a holy son or holy daughter, it was a requirement to possess a divine fetus. Of course, there was also the extremely limited number of people whose natural aptitude was excellent. They clearly were not divine fetuses, yet the potential they displayed surpassed any divine fetus. These two naturally were divine fetuses as well, but in front of Zhao Qingfeng, they knew that their divine fetuses were worth nothing. Just like how celestial kings were divided into 9 heavens, divine fetuses also differed in strength. Zhao Qingfeng was a space element divine fetus. Before celestial king tier, the power of regulation he possessed was stronger than all the 5 elements. The two of them clearly had the same cultivation level, and their natural talent was about equal, but because he was a space element divine fetus, he was much stronger. Actually, Bao Cheng was not as weak as he seemed, but he had not thought that he would actually encounter a space divine fetus. Furthermore, he seemed to have reached great accomplishment at that. Once he had lost the chance to make the first move, he was directly beaten into crap. However, these two assessed themselves. Even if they were now prepared, it would only be a matter of how many blows they could withstand. It was absolutely impossible for them to emerge victorious over Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng's strength was unimaginable. They all could not accept this easily. If it was said that Yin Xinlu could be that strong, they would have no objections, but he was only a mere subordinate, yet was still able to easily defeat them. This was something that they could not accept. Then just how wide was the gap between them and Yin Xinlu? Brother Lu, we are taking our leave. The other holy son and holy daughter's expressions were dim. They had come to contest for the Tao-regulating pill, but with Zhao Qingfeng, what need was there for them to seek their own humiliation here? Lu Xiaming only clasped his hands in farewell, but did not urge them to stay. Initially, they did not have much relation between them. If it were not for the Tao-regulating pill, perhaps they would never have met in this lifetime. After Bao Cheng awoke, he, too, left in misery and dejection. Meanwhile, Zhao Qingfeng looked towards Sundong and said, "Where is that person? Take me there." "Yes, my lord." Surprised but delighted, Sundong hurriedly nodded. This lord was really very awesome, being capable of easily defeating even a holy son. In that case, what was Ling Han worth? You are only the heir of a 3-star force at most. Could you compare to the holy son of a celestial king tier-level force? You will definitely be crushed into dust. Lu Xiaming chuckled and said, "Then I, too, shall go and take a look." He might not need to be concerned about others, but Yin Xinlu was too strong. It was definite that he would become a celestial king in the future, and he had to take advantage of this chance to develop amiable relations with him. Chapter 1861. Alchemist Zi Cheng, having a knack for good business. Chapter 1861. Alchemist Zi Cheng, having a knack for good business. However, when Sundong led Zhao Qingfeng and Lu Xiaming to the first level, they discovered that Ling Han had once again entered into the time cultivation chamber. "It's all right. This person must have come to participate in the martial arts tournament," Zhao Qingfeng said with a slight smile. With his strength, he would definitely be able to emerge victorious from the first level. Then, I will just wait for him in the final rounds. He bared his teeth, showing 2 rows of snow-white teeth, but his expression was as bloodthirsty as a wild beast's. Those who were not familiar with him would only think he was cold, proud, and detached, but those who truly understood him would definitely shiver in fear of him. That was because his favorite hobby was slaughter. Among the 4 heavenly kings under Yin Xinlu, he was the most bloodthirsty. In fact, when he had been contesting for treasures in an ancient site, he had once killed several holy sons and holy daughters. If it were not for the fact that the Eternal Prosperity Palace was an 8th heaven celestial king tier force, he would probably have long since been apprehended and paid with his life for his crimes. Killing prodigies was his greatest hobby. Why did he not kill Baocheng then? It was not because he was afraid of the laws of Alchemy City, of course. This was also one of the factors. After all, he had come for the sake of the Tao-regulating pill. If he was thrown out, how would he report to Yin Xinlu? With how wide the world was, the only one he truly respected was Yin Xinlu. Otherwise, with his natural talent, he could become a holy son in any great sect. So why did he have to become someone else's subordinate? More importantly, Bao Cheng and his group could no longer be considered prodigies in his eyes, and there was nothing fun about killing them. One look from Ling Han was enough to scare Sun Dong to collapse. This had incited his interest. If he encountered him in the tournament, then killing him would be all right, wouldn't it? He showed a grin filled with cruelty. Killing a prodigy would endlessly stimulate his Tao heart. If Ling Han was strong enough, then he would be able to open the doors to the 5th severance through him. Hopefully, Ling Han would not disappoint him. Because Ling Han temporarily could not go to the 2nd level, he first wanted to find out the details of the Tao-regulating pill. It was very simple. Register first, and then fight, 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 fight. Only 4 people would be sent from the 1st level, and then the people who won from the 4 levels would battle again. Finally, the champion would be able to win this Tao-regulating pill. No one from the 5th level would be participating. Those who lived there were all the supreme elites of Alchemy City or great alchemists. Every time Alchemist Zi Cheng concocted some kind of precious alchemical pill, the final destination would be decided through these battles, no matter what grade it was. A few million years ago, there were even a great many ascending origin tiers contesting here. Furthermore, it was not only limited to Alchemy City. As long as one had come to register himself, he could participate in the contest. This alchemist had this fondness and enjoyed watching cultivators beating each other black and blue for the alchemical pills. However, because Alchemy City had the usual practice of sealing the levels whenever there was a tournament, the competition in the first level was the largest. Those who had come from all over the world could only register themselves here, and then charge out of the masses as the winners. There were only 4 spots available, so it would definitely be a fierce battle among giants. Ling Han first went to register himself. This was finished very quickly because the registration period had already started over a dozen days ago. And now, though there were still more people coming to register, the state was completely different from how congested it had once been. The tournament would begin 11 days later, and since he still had time, Ling Han went again to the time cultivation chamber. This time, he naturally only rented one for 10 days' time. After acceleration, that would be 50 days, which was not a short period, and definitely could not be wasted. Without a doubt, the attempts he had made throughout these 50 days had all ended in failure. However, Ling Han's assurance had increased more and more. With another 5 years, he would definitely be able to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills. Then, if there was a 5 times acceleration rate, the time would be shortened to a single year. If there was a 10 times acceleration rate, he would only need half a year's time. If the acceleration rate was even higher than that, this real time could be shortened even further. When Ling Han came out of the cultivation chamber, there was only 1 day left before the great tournament would begin. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden came out of the black tower. She wanted to cheer Ling Han on and see how her beloved man was completely invincible, defeating prodigies of all kinds. Meanwhile, the Empress was still in seclusion as she was at a crucial time in her attempt to break through to the 4th severance. The two of them then headed to the arena of the first level. This arena was used for battle and could be available for spars. It could also be used for battles between man and demonic beast, divine beast, or immortal beast. Of course, there would also be battles between beasts and team battles. Not only was the area for battle in the arena huge, the spectators' seats were also overwhelmingly large and could accommodate 1 million people. In the case of the last row, it would be like watching the battle from atop a mountain, and even the arena would be pitifully small. Thankfully, cultivators had very good eyesight. This little distance would not affect them much. To enter into the arena, one would first have to buy tickets. Furthermore, the ticket price would be different at different times. For example, for a tournament contest like this, the ticket price for merely 1 day was a single star stone, but one could also purchase a through ticket and watch until the entire tournament ended. That would require a price of 10 star stones. The through tickets were extremely popular because ordinary people would not have the right to go to the 4th level normally, but after they entered into the final rounds, all the tournament battles would be held on the 4th level, and buying this through ticket meant that they could go up. As for single tickets, they could not buy them at all. It was said that this arena was backed by Alchemist Zi Cheng. He indeed did not sell pills, but earned great profits through this kind of method. Furthermore, he could also watch the excitement and play around with innumerable prodigies and elites as he liked. Additionally, not only tickets, Alchemist Zi Cheng also had a share in the gambling house. Every time, it would seem as if he was giving out the alchemical pill for free, but this was equivalent to having innumerable prodigies and elites give a free performance for this pill. This could completely compensate for the loss of giving away the alchemical pill. Who said that Alchemist Zi Cheng was someone with more money than sense? Because Ling Han had registered his participation, he was exempted from paying for a ticket. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had bought a through ticket, and it had been bought for a high price from someone else at that. The official channels for selling tickets had long since gone out of stock. What a rip-off, actually wanting 100 star stones. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Though he did have that amount of money, and was not too concerned about it either, a ticket that was initially priced at 10 star stones was now sold for 100. He was being completely treated like a cash cow. It is probable that these peddlers are related to the official authorities. Otherwise, it is not possible that all the tickets are in their hands. Ling Han said in displeasure. They have earned 10 times the profit in an instant. What a good knack for business. He really wanted to meet this Alchemist Zi Cheng. He seemed to be out of the ordinary, but actually his whole person was all about money. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden covered her mouth and laughed softly. Her shoulders quivered slightly, presenting an incredibly beautiful scene. "Let's go in. Watch as your husband shows his divine might," Ling Han said with a smile, entering into the arena with an arm wrapped around the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. To earn money, that had to be the case. The preliminary rounds would finish only after 10 days. Every extra day of battles would mean that they could sell another day's worth of tickets, which was also why the through tickets were popular. Though the price that had to be paid in one go was quite high, if they could watch the whole tournament from beginning to end, the through tickets were really cheap. Ling Han shook his head. The preliminary rounds clearly could be finished in a single day, yet they were forcefully divided into 10 days, and that was why the through ticket appeared to be cheap. Alchemist Zi Cheng was really a very good businessman. He definitely had to meet this person and ask for some lessons in doing business, because if he wanted to improve his divine demon sword to the level of celestial tool, it was unknown how much more godly metal he still needed. It all needed to be bought. There were really too many people that had registered. The battles of the first level had also been divided into 16 major rounds, and one person would emerge from each round. Then, they would continue battling until 8 were left, and then until 4 were left. When there were only 4 left, that was enough. They could head to the 4th level for the finals. But even if it was divided into 16 major rounds, there were still too many people. They could only be divided again. For example, Ling Han's set had as many as 100 people. "Hee, this position for advancement belongs to me," a young man dressed in black said arrogantly and despotically. "Those who do not wish to be wounded just obediently scram. Otherwise, even if you were killed, you would deserve it." Beside him, 11 people shockingly drew their weapons, standing guard around him. They were clearly intending to crush any opponent with an advantage in numbers. Chapter 1862, Watch Your Feet. Chapter 1862, Watch Your Feet. Though this was shameless, it was also making reasonable use of the tournament regulations. No one had made it a rule that over a dozen people could not work together, after all, right? The young man in black was immensely pleased with himself. He had already made up his mind. This time, he would win with an advantage in numbers, and he would clear the path with money next, bombarding his opponents with enough money that they would admit defeat. No matter what, he would have to obtain a place to enter into the 4th level. After that, there was no need for him to think about it. But being able to stand on the stage of the 4th level, he would have naturally gotten enough of the limelight. He had the money and could be as willful as he liked. There was a total of over 100 people in this small set, and now over a dozen people were a single team. This kind of force was really very strong. "Let's get rid of them first," a voice rang out. When everyone heard this, they realized something. Indeed, though the other side had over a dozen people, what about them? There were more or less 100 of them. How could it be that 100 of them were still unable to defeat over a dozen people? Attack! These people all rushed forth and began to gang up on the black-robed young man's group. The young man in black was dumbfounded. He had never imagined that this would have been the result. There were over 100 people. How was over a dozen of them supposed to hold them back? When the spectators saw this, they couldn't help but feel amused. It was very rare to see this kind of scene. One side was clearly at an advantage, but the circumstances were reversed in an instant. That was why it was said that a person had to be humble. Just see, if you showed off too much, this would be the consequences. If the young man in black knew how to use strategy, or, in fact, as long as he had not so arrogantly yelled out his declaration, and instead directly swept aside all opposition the moment the battle started, he would have been able to instantly clear the stage with the combined forces of over a dozen people. But now, he was going to be beaten to crap. Pong, 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 pong. Amidst a chaotic battle, the young man in black and his more than dozen companions were all instantly crippled. Their only advantage lay in numbers, and they did not have any elite that was particularly outstanding and could reverse the desperate crisis. How could they hold up against being ganged up on like this? The young man in black was beaten to the ground, and who knew how many people planted footprints on his body? He forcefully raised his head, and found the direction where the voice had first sounded from. He saw that a young man was presently smiling at him there. He immediately became furious. This guy must have done it on purpose. Just you wait, I will remember this. Meanwhile, Ling Han sighed. Actually, he had only wanted to silently play the role of a handsome man, but who asked everyone to be arranged in the same set. Even if he had not yelled in the end, he would still have had to personally deal with him. In that case, it was better to stoke the flames and watch a show. Ling Han waved a hand with a smile and said, "Have a safe journey." Pong. The young man in black was thrown out of the battle ring, and according to the rules, he was disqualified from the tournament. The young man in black got back to his feet unsteadily, his face covered in bruises. He resolutely said, "We are now enemies. No one can screw me, Shantian Wu, over like this." Ling Han frowned. For some reason, he very much disliked this kind of surname. If he had known that the other had this kind of detestable surname, he definitely would not have just allowed him to flee so easily. He would have thrashed him over and over again. Never mind. The other clearly had no plans to give up the matter. Then, Ling Han would still have the chance to thrash him in future. When Shantian Wu and his group all left, the over 100 people that remained all cheered. Some even hugged one another, appearing to be completely at peace with each other. Others would definitely not believe that they were actually competitors. "Ah, you are very despicable, actually stabbing me," one person suddenly screamed. That was because he had just hugged another, and in the end, the latter stabbed a cold sword into his waist. Thankfully, a severing mundane tear was too strong. This would only cause him severe injury, but not fatality. "My bottom!" Another person had just been kicked out of the ring of battle, exclaiming in pain as he held his behind. What had initially been a state of peace now immediately became a state of mutual hostility. It was very comical. The spectators that were watching all laughed loudly and felt that this set battling was really too cheery. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden, meanwhile, smiled bitterly. As long as her husband was there, it seemed that whatever serious matter would immediately become a comical farce. Ling Han scratched his head. He really hadn't done anything. He had only given a holler. "Pretty boy, get out of here." A middle-aged man brandished his saber and delivered a slash. Everyone was in the severing mundane tier here, yet they were all engaging in a battle royale in a limited space. Actually, merely the shock waves that resulted from the battles were enough to cause great damage. This man had a strong physique. Under the shock waves of the battle, his skin was exuding a light silvery shimmer, as if he had turned into a silver god of war that held power that could destroy the heavens and rend the earth, and he swept towards Ling Han. "Watch your feet," Ling Han said with a grin. "What?" The middle-aged man faltered slightly. "My saber is already close to striking you, and you actually tell me to watch my feet. What is the meaning of that? Has your brain been kicked by a mule, brat?" He thought so, but the saber in his hand did not pause in its course at all, and continued on its way to strike Ling Han's head. Just when it looked like the saber's blade was about to strike Ling Han's neck, he involuntarily showed an expression of joy. He was definitely going to land this hit. But just at this moment, he saw Ling Han raise his hand, and he did not see the latter make any big move, but the saber which he had waved out suddenly took a sharp turn and descended directly with a light wave of Ling Han, striking the ground instead. Coincidentally, he just happened to be charging out, his left foot slightly behind. This strike had landed on the instep of his left foot. "Ah!" the middle-aged man screamed out immediately. He had put a lot of force in this strike, instilling all the power of regulations he had. With this strike, his whole foot had been sliced in half. Pooh! Blood sprayed out in all directions. "Watch your feet." So that was what he meant. He looked dumbly at Ling Han. How could there be anything so coincidental in this world? Just a casual word from Ling Han, and that just happened to be the result. The latter's strength had to be strong to a heaven-defying extent, and that was why he had a grasp of the whole situation, so everything would go as he wished. The middle-aged man was covered in cold sweat. Thankfully, The other party had only let this strike land on his foot, and not on his D*CK. He had already been merciful. Many thanks. Leaving behind these words, he hurriedly ran out of the battle ring. In the spectators' seats, everyone was both curious and amused. How could there be someone like that? He had just been aggressively brandishing his saber in a strike, yet the result was this attack had landed on his own foot. Then, he turned to thank his opponent. This was practically inexplicable. Hee, this is because that young man is very strong. Thus, that saber wielder had struck the instep of his own foot, yet still had to thank him for not killing him, a young man explained. Though he said that Ling Han was very strong, his face bore an expression of arrogance. The prodigy of the Cheng clan, Cheng Fengyun. He is an incredible character. It is said that he is just a step away from becoming a king tier. Since he said that that young man is very strong, he must be very strong indeed. Those around him all talked spiritedly. Some even bravely asked, "Young Master Cheng, why are you not participating? Also, if you were matched up against that young man, what do you think of your chances of victory?" Cheng Fengyun's expression was filled with pride as he declared, 100%. Ling Han was very powerful, but as he saw it, he was nothing more than this. As for why he did not participate, you had to be joking. This time, even Zhao Qingfeng had come, and he had caused 3 holy sons and holy daughter to leave dejectedly through a single battle. Just what kind of strength was that? No matter who participated, they would all be trampled over by Zhao Qingfeng. In that case, why should he seek his own humiliation? He was already very well known, and did not need to make use of this kind of tournament to increase his own reputation. Young Master Cheng, as you see it, would this young man be able to emerge victorious from this set? Another person asked. Cheng Fengyun gave it some thought, shook his head and said, "Impossible. By now, he has already shown off his ability, and he would definitely be ganged up on by the others. Emerging victorious would be as difficult as ascending the heavens." Chapter 1863, Using Strength to Deliver a Slap in the Face. Chapter 1863, Using Strength to Deliver a Slap in the Face. But with this explanation from Cheng Fengyun, the people around all nodded. That was right. Previously, Shan Tianwu had been too arrogant, and that was why he had been targeted. He had been ganged up on by the joined forces of over 100 people and was instantly cleared off the stage. And now, though there were only over 60 people left here, Ling Han was only one person too. 1 against 60, how was he supposed to fight? True enough, when they discovered how strong Ling Han was, the people around him all set their eyes on him, all of them like vicious wolves. Only after working together to get rid of the strongest would relatively weaker people like them have a chance to stand out. Since you have cropped up, we'll beat you up first. The over 60 people all surrounded him. The majority had drawn their weapons, and regulations flickered, connecting with Great Tao. Multiple pillars of light shot into the skies, presenting an astonishing sight. A pack of wolves could devour a tiger, even if the tiger was fierce, so what? Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Watch your feet." Fuck, why was it this phrase again? The middle-aged man that had not walked too far couldn't help but feel as if he had stepped on empty space and almost stumbled onto the ground. This phrase had already become a nightmare for him. Charge! The over 60 people made their move. Some shot down from the skies, while some swept outwards. Some even tunneled into the ground, unleashing their attacks from beneath the ground. It was a 3-dimensional coverage of 360 degrees, without any gaps at all. Who could block this kind of attack? Ling Han stretched out a hand and pressed down lightly. Pa, 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 pa. Everyone felt their body become heavy and involuntarily fell on the ground. Then, they couldn't move, and those that had tunneled underground were forcefully seized out of the ground and similarly affixed on the ground. Then, the weapons in their hands all fell, landing on their respective feet. Ah! A series of painful cries rang out. There was definitely not a single exception among the 60-odd people. Even if they did not have a weapon in hand, an ice spike would still poke out of the ground and bore a hole open in their foot. Previously, Though it had been a comical farce, it had not drawn the attention of so many people. After all, there were too many battles that were being simultaneously held, and everyone's eyes had too many things to see. This place was only slightly amusing and was not especially exciting. But the unfolding of this scene finally drew the attention of a great many people. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ling Han. It was as if he was exuding a glow that exclaimed how awesome he was all of a sudden. Meanwhile, a dead silence had fallen on the area Cheng Fengyun was in. A considerable number suppressed their amusement with much difficulty. You just said that he was showing off too much and would be in big trouble when he was being targeted by the masses, but he immediately used his strength to deliver a slap straight to your face. Just see, he had gained a great victory amidst cheerful talk and laughter. Cheng Fengyun's expression was incredibly embarrassed. This slap to his face had come too fast, making him feel ashamed and unable to show his face. However, he immediately humphed and said, even if he can emerge victorious from this set, he couldn't possibly go too far, either. This time, who knows how many top-grade prodigies have come for the sake of the Tao-regulating pill. Even if he can pass this round, he will not be able to pass the next. He paused for a while, and then continued, to say the least, even if he really enters into the finals, there is still Lord Zhao Qingfeng. In this world, who could be a worthy match for Lord Zhao Qingfeng? A great many people did not know who Zhao Qingfeng was, but felt that Cheng Fengyun's words were logical. Merely emerging victorious from this set really did not mean much. Ling Han was strong, but there were too many elites here. A great many sets had actually long since ended their battles, and those victors gazed at Ling Han with eyes filled with challenge, and then withdrew their gazes. For king tiers, it was naturally only a matter of course for them to emerge victorious from this kind of small set, and Ling Han had actually spent such a long time to end the battle. It was imaginable how weak he was. He was not worthy of their notice. Ling Han naturally would not take the thoughts of others to heart. When a recorder had taken note of his index number, he clapped his hands and left. The next battle would be held tomorrow. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden descended from the spectators' seats and joined Ling Han. The two of them walked out of the arena together. However, they had just exited when they saw Shantian Wu was presently standing guard at the doors, sticking out his head and looking around. When he discovered Ling Han, Shantian Wu immediately leaped up and pointed at Ling Han. Guys, thrash him. He hated Ling Han very much. Thus, after he had been disqualified, he waited at the exit. No matter what, he was going to teach Ling Han a harsh lesson. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. This guy actually delivered himself up to be beaten. Not bad. He was quite enlightened. Brat, you can actually still laugh? Shantian Wu did not see how Ling Han had shown his might. Otherwise, if he had known that the 60-odd people had all been defeated by Ling Han in an instant, then what were over the dozen of them worth? They weren't even enough to be considered as an appetizer for Ling Han. Why wouldn't I be able to laugh? Ling Han asked. You will know why immediately. Shantian Wu smirked coldly and waved his hand. Thrash him as hard as you can. Thrash him so hard that even his mother would not be able to recognize him. Yes, young master. The more than dozen people all charged over. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Watch your feet. Those people naturally did not know this amusing joke, and though they did feel curious, they did not take it to heart and still charged towards Ling Han. However, in a mere instant, they all screamed out in pain. That was because the weapons in their hands had all landed on their feet for some reason. One of them was wielding a battle axe, and the landing of this strike had chopped off his entire instep. Shantian Wu couldn't help but take 2 steps back, an expression of horror appearing on his face. This scene had scared him out of his wits. I already told you guys to watch your feet. Ling Han smiled slightly. Come, all of you go and thrash that ugly guy so hard that even his own mother wouldn't be able to recognize him. Those people all exchanged looks. That was their young master. Would they dare to make a move on him? Ling Han slowly said, You guys want to watch your feet again? The might of a king tear spread out, causing them to shiver and tremble in fear. The group of over a dozen people felt their hearts clench and immediately turned around, setting their eyes on Shantian Wu. You people, what do you all want to do? Shantian Wu's face had turned green from fright. Why were these people's eyes so vicious? Ling Han coughed lightly, and the over a dozen people immediately pounced towards Shantian Wu. With a large commotion, they all gave him a severe thrashing. Though Shantian Wu had some strength, he was still some distance away from the level of prodigy. Being able to charge up to the severing mundane tier was just barely achieved through his clan having sacrificed innumerable resources. How could he possibly match the ganging up of over a dozen elites that were the same level as he? He was immediately beaten so harshly that he did not even look human anymore. Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden exchanged a smile and strode off. This was only a minor episode. The night passed, and they had come once more to the arena to begin the second day of the tournament. However, they were stopped before even managing to enter this time. It was Shantian Wu again. His head was wrapped in bandages, so his entire head appeared very swollen. After all, he had been beaten by over a dozen people for very long, especially on his head, and even if there were miraculous medicines to treat him, his head would still be incredibly swollen. It was impossible that the swelling would go down in a short period of time. Brother, that's him. This time, Shantian Wu had not brought too many people. Instead, there was only a young man that had features similar to his. This man's name was Shantian Jia, and he was the older brother of Shantian Wu. Shantian Jia slanted a sideways glance at Ling Han, a sinister smile curling up his lips as he said, "Break your arms and your legs. Otherwise, even in Alchemy City, there is no way you can live for more than 3 days." Chapter 1864, Another Discussion of Victory or Defeat. Chapter 1864, Another Discussion of Victory or Defeat. The Shantian clan could be considered an old clan of Alchemy City. They were not a noble clan of alchemists, but their clan's ancestor was a dividing soul-tier elite, and was quite well known even in the 3rd level. Yet now, they had actually suffered a setback in the 1st level. This naturally made them feel humiliated. If it were not for the sake of decreasing the pressure of the competition, Shantian Wu would not have possibly come deliberately to the 1st level to participate. And contrary to his expectations, he had not even managed to pass the 1st round. However, now that Ling Han had offended the Shantian clan, did he think he could pretend nothing had happened? If it were not for the fact that this was Alchemy City, Ling Han would have long since died 100 times over. Ling Han crooked a finger and said, "Looks like you, too, want to be beaten." Ha ha ha. Shantian Jia laughed loudly, but there was not much humor to his laughter. It was completely a taunting laughter. "Do you think that I am the same kind of idiot as my younger brother?" Shantian Wu. However, the gap between the two brothers was indeed very wide. One was a prodigy, while the other was comparatively mediocre. One had long since advanced into the 4th severance, while the other had just barely advanced into even the severing mundane tier, and basically would not have any hope of advancing further than that. Thus, Shantian Jia had enough confidence to be proud. Ling Han wanted to make a move. Though the tournament was about to begin, suppressing this kind of character was only a matter of raising his hand for him. However, before he managed to, he saw a staff member run over and say, "The tournament is about to begin. Come quickly to draw your lot." With this interruption, Ling Han also dismissed the thought of making a move and followed the other into the arena. "Brother!" Shantian Wu called out defiantly. Not only did this brother of his call him an idiot, he even allowed Ling Han to enter the arena. "Are you really my brother?" Yet Shantian Jia shook his head. Though the Shantian clan was very powerful, they were nothing compared to Grandmaster Zi Cheng. He did not dare to barge into the arena and wreak havoc. He humphed and said, "We'll go in and take a look, and when he leaves, we can make our move. It won't be too late." Shantian Wu could only nod. In front of this overbearing brother, he could only be a yes man. The two of them entered the arena and began to watch the battles. The battles on the 2nd day were no longer a battle royale, but an individual spar of 1 against 1. After all, 99% of the participants had been disqualified yesterday, and those that remained behind now were only about 1,000. They had to be fielded sparingly, or the battles would not last for the consecutive 9 days. After they had drawn lots, the contestants that had won yesterday were divided into 16 areas. Only one person could qualify for the next round from each area, and then they would have to win another 2 rounds before they could enter into the final rounds on the 4th level. Ling Han was allocated into the 2nd area, and his first opponent's name was Qingfeng. He did not know the details of this opponent, nor did he take it to heart. For someone who was determined to become the ultimate champion, it did not matter what kind of opponent he encountered on his way. They would all be defeated in his hands. The battles in the 16 major areas began at the same time. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly end in one day. If everything was drawn out too long, it would seem tedious and boring. Some battles very soon ended. That was because a great many prodigies from other forces had come to the 1st level. There was no shortage of king tiers among them. Then, it was natural that they had ended their battles in an instant. But there were only king tiers here, but no emperor tiers. That was because emperor tiers would have to come from at least 4-star forces. If they had come here, they would have some privileges and would not have to battle on the 1st level. There were incredibly drawn-out battles as well. Both sides would be locked in a furious exchange of blows, and from the look of things, it did not seem like the victory would be decided in a single day. Ling Han waited for a while, and then it was his turn. His opponent had also arrived on the stage. It was a young man whose features were sinister. He was dressed all in blue, with the symbol of a black cauldron woven into his robes. Qingfeng, the holy son of Black Cauldron Sect. Black Cauldron Sect? The 3-star force, Black Cauldron Sect? Hiss, it is said that Qingfeng has the aptitude of a king tier, and can suppress 100 elites of the same cultivation level all on his own? That has to be the case. Otherwise, how could he be considered a king tier? This Qingfeng had a big renown, and was recognized immediately by many. Perhaps he had also drawn the attention of many others as well. After all, he was a king tier, and was not someone that they could see at any other time easily. And in the eyes of the masses, Ling Han naturally became the background whose only purpose was to enhance his display of strength. On the spectators' seats, Shantianjiu also showed a smile and murmured, "I never thought that this brat's first opponent would actually be Qingfeng. Then, there is definitely no chance for him to enter into the 2nd round. Even if it was me, I would only have a 50% chance of winning against Qingfeng." He was definitely blowing his own trumpet. With his abilities, he would definitely be ending in defeat if he was matched with Qingfeng. Furthermore, it would be a horrible defeat. In fact, it could even be an instant defeat. Meanwhile, Shantian Wu seemed very excited and very much anticipated watching Ling Han be defeated. And then, he would make things worse for him and give Ling Han a good thrashing so that he would suffer doubly both mental and physical pain. And in yesterday's positions, Cheng Fengyun and his group were seated in rows. That was because they had all bought through tickets, so it was practically made up of all the original members. "Young Master Cheng, what do you think would happen today?" Someone actually asked Cheng Fengyun to again provide a commentary, though it was not known whether he had done it deliberately or otherwise. With a schwa, all eyes in the surroundings were set on him. Being looked at by so many people, with Cheng Fengyun's vanity, he naturally would not be able to shirk the matter. He thought for a moment and said, "Though Ling Han is indeed not weak, it is clear that Qingfeng is stronger. It should be known that those people yesterday had only been a mob who had an empty advantage in numbers, yet did not know how to work together, nor did they have any individual that was particularly strong. But it is a different story today. Those that have managed to emerge victorious from the battle royale yesterday can all be considered elites. And Qingfeng, you have heard it too. He is the holy son of Black Cauldron Sect, and is furthermore a king tier of the younger generation. I dare make the assertion that it would definitely be Qingfeng who would be victorious in this battle, and furthermore, it would be a crushing victory." If this prediction did not take Ling Han into consideration, that was really quite logical. A holy son that had come from a 3-star force might not be able to match an heir from a 4-star force, but the gap wouldn't be too wide, either. Thus, everyone nodded repeatedly, expressing their agreement with Cheng Fengyun's opinion. However, Ling Han is really very strong. He only used a single move yesterday to defeat over 60 people. Perhaps he, too, is a king tier? Still, there were others that maintained a different opinion. How about we place some stakes? Someone was deliberately stoking the flames and turned to look towards Cheng Fengyun. Cheng Fengyun's pride acted up, and he declared, if Ling Han can still make a comeback in this battle, in fact, if he can hold on for only 100 moves, I will eat the chair under my behind. Great. Those who watched the excitement naturally did not mind the matter blowing up. The spectators all began cheering, seeming as if they were praising Cheng Fengyun. In truth, they were only forcing him into a corner so that there would be no way he could go back on his word. Cheng Fengyun was filled with confidence. Qingfeng's strength was definitely guaranteed. There was definitely no problem with his judgment. As for yesterday, that was because Shantian Wu and his group were too weak. Everyone's interest intensified. At first, the victory of the battle between Ling Han and Tang Feng was no concern of theirs. But now that it involved a gamble, their feelings of anticipation soared instantly. Chapter 1865. It was still one move. Chapter 1865. It was still one move. Just forfeit. Tang Feng stated calmly, appearing to be indifferent. Ling Han chuckled and said, I have never developed that habit. If you fight with me, you will only be seeking your own humiliation. Tang Feng continued, seeming very disdainful. He was the holy son of a 3-star great sect, and was actually compelled to be battled through multiple levels of selections, which made him feel very insulted. As he saw it, all his opponents should grovel beneath his feet and respectfully deliver him all the way to the apex. Ling Han shook his head and said, Make your move. Tang Feng frowned and showed a hint of displeasure. I have already repeatedly advised you, yet you still refuse to heed it. He said, if I did make a move, it would not just end in a horrible defeat for you. Oh, tell me about it, Ling Han said calmly. You will be crippled in my hands. Tang Feng humped, clearly angered. Ling Han really did not know what was good for him. In that case, Tang Feng would just have to make him suffer a bit. This was just right. He could use this person as an example for the rest, and there should be no other person that dared to fight him tomorrow. They would admit defeat the moment they saw him. Since he was asking for a beating, he would just have to beat him into submission. He stretched out a hand, and without using any celestial technique, he simply grabbed at Ling Han. However, he was a king tier of the younger generation, so this casual movement of stretching out his hand was filled with pressure, and endless stars surged in the palm of his hand. Even if they were sitting outside the arena, countless people felt their hearts suddenly clench as goosebumps rose all over their bodies. This strike was extremely devastating. As expected of a king tier, he was strong, so strong that others would be rendered speechless. The palm strike landed as a great star had fallen, possessing the might of destroying worlds. Yet Ling Han merely smiled faintly and said, Watch your feet. Pooh! A considerable number of people spluttered. They naturally were Cheng Fengyun and his group. They were incredibly familiar with this phrase. But the problem here was that yesterday, Ling Han's opponents were only a rowdy mob, but today, Tang Feng was a 4th Severance King tier. So how could the trash from yesterday compare with him? Could Ling Han create a miracle? Ah! Tang Feng suddenly released a sharp cry when this palm strike of his had descended. Ling Han lightly pushed it aside and changed the course of attack, making it land on his own foot. Just how powerful was this strike? Boom! Even if the arena had been reinforced through formations, it still trembled strongly, and Tang Feng's whole left foot was crushed into mush. He looked at Ling Han in shock, his face looking like he had seen a ghost. He actually forgot about his pain and was just staring at Ling Han in a daze. I already told you to watch your feet. Ling Han shook his head. Tang Feng's expression was bitter. With such an exchange, he already knew he was far from a match for Ling Han. He was indeed a king tier, but Ling Han was a king among kings. The gap of battle prowess between the two sides was overwhelmingly huge. I forfeit, Tang Feng said, but his face also regained some vigor. His opponent had to be an heir from a celestial king tier-level force who had deliberately concealed his identity. It was not unjust that he had lost. On the spectators' seats, those that had watched this scene could not help but sigh. When it first started, Tang Feng could be said to be awe-inspiring, but when they had really fought, he was completely outmatched. Have you guys made some mistake? How could he be a king tier? That's right, that's right. Shouldn't a king tier be invincible among his peers? That person called Ling Han is only a third Severance Peak stage, and is inferior to Tang Feng by a minor level, yet could defeat the latter with one move. When it comes to Tang Feng, he is a king tier of the present generation. Isn't that a joke? He must be someone having the same name. A great many people stubbornly thought that this Tang Feng was not the Tang Feng that they thought he was, but some bore stunned expressions. They were sure that this Tang Feng was the holy son of Black Cauldron sect. Ling Han, just who exactly was he? How could he be so powerful? Brother! Shantian Wu called out to his brother, his expression filled with doubt. He also belonged to the category of people that did not know Tang Feng, and seeing how Tang Feng had been defeated in a single move, he naturally felt extreme disdain. What kind of king tier is that, Pei? He had anticipated Ling Han's horrible defeat for so long, yet the result was the complete opposite. Pa! Shantianjiu delivered a slap right onto his younger brother's face. He had used so much force that the latter spat out a good number of teeth. Why did you hit me? Because he was already used to Shantianjiu's abuse of authority, Shantian Wu actually did not look angry and merely asked this question, very hurt. What did he do? He didn't do anything. Don't go and trifle with that guy again. Though Shantianjiu resented him for failing to meet his expectations, this idiot was still his younger brother. Why? Shantian Wu's eyes widened. This person is very likely an heir of a celestial king tier-level great sect. Shantianjiu had no choice but to explain to prevent this idiotic brother of his from being stubborn and causing trouble again. If he talked about king tiers, emperor tiers, and monarch tiers with Shantian Wu, he would not have any concept of it, but once he talked about a celestial king tier-level sect, he immediately understood. That was because he knew that the clans on the top two levels were existences that he definitely could not trifle with, and they were just immortal palace tier and ascending origin tier-level forces. If it was a celestial king tier level, Shantian Wu couldn't help but shiver. Actually, he was really just a profligate, and he was indeed very arrogant, but not stupid in the slightest. Brother, are you sure? He was still a bit unrelenting. Don't tell me that you think my judgment is worse than yours? Shantianjiu couldn't help but feel slightly annoyed. When has it been your right to doubt me? Only then did Shantian Wu agree, no longer daring to say anything else. From now onwards, do not have any further involvements with him. Shantianjiu stared at Ling Han for a while and closed his eyes. After today ended, he would bring his younger brother back to the third level. And on Cheng Fengyun's side, the atmosphere was extraordinarily peculiar. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Cheng Fengyun, and they felt that this guy was really a jinx. Yesterday, whoever he had a high opinion of would be unlucky and lose, and that was the case today as well. He was practically a god of bad luck. Ahem. Someone deliberately coughed and looked towards Cheng Fengyun's bottom. Of course, he did not have any interest in Cheng Fengyun's *S. He was just reminding the latter not to forget his previous bet. Cheng Fengyun's expression was livid, his hands gripping tightly the armrests of the stone chair, and his eyes were practically spitting fire. He really did not have the slightest grudge with Ling Han, but with Ling Han having slapped him twice in the face like this, he was really resenting him now. To recount, it was really baffling that Ling Han had gotten an enemy like this. He was also extremely innocent, but it indirectly proved that he indeed did have a halo of trouble and could manage to attract trouble even in such a manner. I will eat it. Cheng Fengyun gritted his teeth, accepting his loss. He was a relatively fair gambler, but he had forgotten that others had not bet anything against him at all. Even if he had won, he would not have gained any benefits. Tang Feng left despondently, whilst Ling Han qualified for the next round. This caused many jaws to drop, and also caused Ling Han to truly gain the attention of many. Some people shone so brilliantly that no matter how hard they tried to hide it, their brightness would still show and stun the masses. When Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden left the arena, they couldn't help but feel slightly surprised because they actually did not see Shantianjiu and his brother. Strange. Didn't they say that they were going to deal with him? Where were they now? Ling Han naturally would not wait for them. He smiled and strode off with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They would fight another day. The two of them returned to their accommodations, yet saw a great many people had arrived. They represented different clans, all wanting to recruit Ling Han. Furthermore, it was not just limited to the forces of Alchemy City. There were also forces from outside the city. Chapter 1866, 10 Slaps. Chapter 1866, 10 Slaps. Even though a great many forces had offered generous conditions, Ling Han did not agree to any one of them. What a joke. Even if he had become a holy son. So what? All those gathered here were only 2-star forces and 3-star forces. Their influence was too limited. Only Alchemy City's range of influence was wide enough. Wasn't it said that at least 40% of all alchemical pills in the celestial realm came from Alchemy City? Then, they had more or less coverage of the whole eastern celestial realm. To become the young master of Alchemy City, one would at least have to be a heavyweight character. Then, it would be much easier for Commander Guan to find out where he was. Moreover, using this identity to traverse the boundless seas would have a higher level of safety. Of course, this would also bring a new problem: the Thundercloud Palace and Zi clan. They obviously would not spare Ling Han. Then, even if they were wary of Rock Palace, they would assassinate him secretly. After all, due to the celestial realm being so colossal, with innumerable elites, who would dare say that they were the culprits as long as there was no evidence? Perhaps they would think that this Ling Han was not that Ling Han. The true Ling Han had already gone to the western celestial realm, and this was only someone bearing the same name. After all, one was a prodigy of martial arts, yet had now suddenly become a prodigy of alchemy. This transformation was too drastic. How many people would actually believe the two were one and the same? Ling Han tactfully declined all the offers of recruitment. Some expressed pity, some asked Ling Han to reconsider, and some issued vague threats, and those Ling Han did not pay any attention to, and rebuffed them with cold words, throwing them out. In Alchemy City, even if they were dividing soul tiers, or immortal palace tiers, would they dare make a move on him? Maybe an ascending origin tier would. This was a great elite that could write their own rules. Of course, they, too, could play around outside the rules of the game, and who could control them? A night passed, and a new tournament day had come again. There was no way to describe Ling Han's luck. If you said that he was unlucky, he always managed to encounter such precious treasures like the Heavenly Tao Jade and 9 Heavens Flame. To say nothing of celestial kings when they were young, they might not be able to get such treasures even now. But if you thought he was lucky, he would always encounter people like Luo Qingfeng and Zi Bingyun too, which would lead to a series of events. This time was no exception. He had hopes of getting the Tao regulating pill, but the opponent he encountered today was another king tier. Even though this was a 4-star city, where there were countless prodigies, there were really not that many that had managed to reach the level of king tier. But Ling Han repeatedly encountered them. Just what kind of luck did he have? Today, his opponent was Yi Tianhe, the holy son of Crimson Rainbow Sect, a 3-star force. Young Master Cheng, why don't you provide a commentary again today? Practically the same group from the day before yesterday and yesterday had appeared, and the spectators had again fixed their eyes on Cheng Fengyun. Battles progressed fiercely in the arena, and there was no shortage of excitement outside, either. Cheng Fengyun could be considered to have astonishing toughness. Yesterday, he had already eaten a stone chair, and had also paid for the damages because of it, yet he had come again today. It was unknown whether he really had a masochistic inclination by nature. Wrong. He wanted to rise from where he had fallen. He did not believe that Ling Han would be able to walk all the way to the end, and this was a firm dispute for him. Yi Tianhe is the holy son of Crimson Rainbow Sect. Furthermore, his bloodline is also extremely powerful. Even if he is not a divine fetus, He possesses strong special abilities, and his strength is superior to Qingfeng's, Cheng Fengyun said. In any case, he was not going to support Ling Han. Everyone only smiled slightly. You fuck said the same thing yesterday, and what happened? Then does young Master Cheng still think that Ling Han would lose? Someone deliberately asked, wanting to force Cheng Fengyun to directly give a definite answer, and not this kind of assessment that was just focused on strength. Cheng Fengyun gritted his teeth and said, "This time, Ling Han will definitely lose." Young Master Cheng, why don't we make another wager? There would always be people who wanted nothing more than for the world to be in chaos. Cheng Fengyun glared harshly at that person. What fuck wager? If he won, he would not gain any profits. He had really been too careless yesterday. Today, he was not going to make the same mistake. I bet that Ling Han will win. A very melodious female voice rang out, and a woman with a voluptuous figure walked over. Do you dare accept the bet? She looked at Cheng Fengyun. This naturally was the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Yesterday, she had already taken notice of the happenings over here, and discovered that Cheng Fengyun was still determined to pester her husband today, so she was naturally furious. Cheng Fengyun's heart rippled. There were not many exquisite beauties as beautiful as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. They would either be hidden from the world, or marry the young masters of noble clans, and there was no hope for him at all. Fine, what should we bet? His fighting spirit instantly rose. If I win, you will slap yourself 10 times, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. An angry expression flashed over Cheng Fengyun's face. A mere Genesis tear, and she dared to challenge him? Do you think that just because you are a little beautiful, you can be completely unreserved? He humphed and said, if I win, I will slap you 10 times. He would first slap her until she knew the pain, and then he would softly knead with the next few strikes so he could take a little advantage of her. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was displeased. She knew what kind of ideas the other party had. However, what they were betting were 10 slaps, and from this aspect, the other party had not gone overboard. Thus, she nodded and said, all right. She was naturally filled with confidence in Ling Han. To say nothing of the fact that it was only a king tier, even if it was an emperor tier, Ling Han had already killed 2. The spectators were naturally even more excited. A wager added with a beautiful woman. They instantly became more exhilarated. In the arena, Yi Tianhe strode into the ring of battle. He wore a silvery white tight-fitting suit, enhancing the slenderness of his figure. His features were also incredibly handsome, enough to incite envy from others. His natural talent in martial arts was already so high, and he was still so indescribably handsome at that. How were others supposed to live? He looked at Ling Han, and after a while, he said, I watched you fight yesterday. How was it? Ling Han asked, smiling. You're very strong. Yi Tianhe nodded somberly. However, I have never had the habit of retreating without a battle. Fighting with an elite like you may compel me to become even stronger. Ling Han still smiled. He did not say that fighting with someone like him actually did not bring him the slightest benefit. Furthermore, the other party had not offended him, so he would not get any pleasure from stepping on him. Then he should just quickly do away with him. Perhaps, when he went to the 4th level, there would be stronger opponents appearing, and he, too, wanted to take a look. I hope you will not disappoint me, Yi Tianhe said. He began to gather power. Boom! A mighty river surged from the top of his head, soaring straight into the skies. The sounds of water thundered loudly, resembling the appearance of great Tao. I am master of the divine river, Yi Tianhe declared loudly a few breaths later. His whole person was wrapped in regulations of water, while his feet were stepping on the river as he soared in midair. It was like he had turned into a river god. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Come. Charge. A 3-pronged halberd appeared in Yi Tianhe's hands. It was manifested through regulations of water. He held it with both hands, and the water under his feet surged, bringing him in a rapid dash towards Ling Han. Then, he stretched out the halberd in a stab. Boom! The waters rolled out, all turning into the force behind this strike, and surging towards Ling Han in an astonishingly frightening way. Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed out at the three-pronged halberd. "How dare you?" Etienne roared angrily. "To actually look down on me so far, you are too arrogant. Then you must pay the price." The river underneath his feet turned into two clear beasts of jade water, and as their hooves galloped, their speed became faster and faster. The halberd's blade pierced out rapidly. It was formed from regulations and had endless destructive power. Ling Han only acted like he had not seen it. His right hand descended and he grabbed the three-pronged halberd. "Explode!" Etienne shouted loudly. The regulations of water burst, wanting to shatter Ling Han's hand forcefully through the explosive impact. Ling Han smiled slightly. Boom! He began to unleash flames that flickered and danced through the whole sky. Chapter 1867. The Tragic Cheng Fengyun. Chapter 1867. The Tragic Cheng Fengyun. Water and fire were completely incompatible. Although water overcame fire among the 5 elements, this was not an absolutely restrictive relation. Instead, both were the weakness of the other. While water did overcome fire, fire could also overcome water, and it would depend on which was the stronger. Etienne was very extraordinary. He was not a divine fetus, but possessed a little battle prowess ability which allowed him to unleash battle prowess that was inferior only to divine fetus. This was also why he was even stronger than Qingfeng. Unfortunately, Ling Han presently was a true divine fetus. Moreover, Nine Heavens' flame was stronger than a divine fetus. Divine fetus could only draw on some celestial king tier-level power, but Nine Heavens' flame was a celestial king tier-level existence itself, and was naturally even stronger than a divine fetus. Ling Han did not even have to use the Nine Heavens' flame. He only had to release his power of divine fetus, and the flames took the form of multiple seals, rising in resistance against the water element Great Tao. If it was a real clash of the two Great Tao of water and fire, there would actually be no difference in power. After advancing to Celestial King tier, regulations did not differ in strength. However, both Ling Han and Etienne were only in the Severing Mundane tier, so the gap was still huge. As the flames blazed fiercely, steam rose, and then there was no longer any river that soared skywards. Visibly, this divine river was drying up, as if it had encountered a great drought that would happen once in a century. In an instant, it had completely evaporated. Etienne's appearance had also changed greatly. At first, he looked elegant and handsome, yet now he was all skin and bones, as if all the liquid in his body had been evaporated as well. He was not much different from a dried corpse. On the spectators' seats, everyone was speechless. Who would have imagined that what should have been a fierce battle would actually end so quickly? Yesterday, Ling Han had defeated Qingfeng with a single move, and today, he had similarly defeated Etienne with a single move. To say nothing of the fact that no one had defeated Ling Han, even the question of exactly how strong he was could not be guessed at. Hiss, just who exactly was this Ling Han? Cheng Fengyun's face muscles twitched. Though the battle had yet to be decided, he already knew that he had lost. Fuck! He was cursing in his heart. How could there be someone so strong? Or rather, how could such a strong person possibly appear in the first level? If you were the heir of a Celestial King tier-level sect, then an exception would have been made for you, and you would have been led to the 4th level no matter what. Have you deliberately come to cause me trouble? I admit defeat, Etienne declared in a trembling voice. If he did not forfeit now, the seals of Great Tao in his body would be burnt by the divine flames, and his cultivation level would retreat 1,000 miles. Ling Han released his grip and took a few steps back. Smiling, he said, "You let me win." Etienne's figure shook. The source power flickered slightly, and his body immediately filled out. In the first place, he had not sustained any major injuries. As long as his life force was not damaged, it would not have much effect on a cultivator. He regained his handsome appearance and cast a deep look on Ling Han. Then, he said, "Brother Ling, let me first wish you that you will be invincible and gain the final victory. However, I heard that Zhao Qingfeng has come. This person, I have seen him move in an ancient site before. He is indescribably strong. I only managed to escape out of luck. Zhao Qingfeng again. It was already not Ling Han's first time hearing this name. Previously, it was only from an investigator who had not even entered the severing mundane tier. He could think that it was the latter who was simply amazed because of his lack of experience, but Yi Tianhe was a king tier, and even he was so wary, which showed that Zhao Qingfeng was indeed extraordinarily strong. I will take note. He smiled. No, Brother Ling, Yi Tianhe said seriously. Zhao Qingfeng's strength has exceeded the range of Emperor tier. I estimate that even if he hasn't advanced into the Monarch tier, he would not be too far off, either. Only now did Ling Han seriously take this matter to heart. Monarch tier. However, without advancing into the 5th severance, no matter how strong the prodigy was, he would not be qualified to be called a Monarch tier. He could only be considered an excellent figure among Emperor tiers. For example, like Ling Han, only if he had succeeded in the 5th severance could he have the right to call himself a Monarch tier. He did not believe that Zhao Qingfeng had achieved the 5th severance. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to even fight. He should just directly admit defeat. The gap between 4th severance and 5th severance was like the gap between the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier. That was a qualitative difference. Furthermore, Zhao Qingfeng's favorite hobby is killing prodigies. Yi Tianhe grimaced and said, I did not die, not because Zhao Qingfeng has become kind, but rather because he does not even deign to kill those who are mediocre. In Zhao Qingfeng's eyes, king tiers were actually just mediocre. Ling Han nodded and said, all right, I will keep that in mind. Yi Tianhe also nodded, turned, and left. His figure was a little despondent. After all, in a battle of equals, and a battle between a 4th severance and a 3rd severance at that, he had lost completely. This had seriously struck a blow on his pride. On the spectators' seats, Cheng Fengyun's expression was livid. At this moment, he really wanted to rush down and beat Yi Tianhe up. You call yourself a king tier? Rubbish, absolute nonsense. Slap then, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said calmly. When it came to gambling, Cheng Fengyun's character was quite fair. He gritted his teeth and began to deliver slaps on his own face. This battle naturally caused Ling Han's rising reputation to become even louder, and also drew even more forces to recruit him, but just like yesterday, Ling Han did not bother to give them any regard. On the 4th day, the 5th day, Ling Han had encountered king tiers. The participants were becoming fewer and fewer, and the chances for encountering elites were naturally higher and higher, but encountering Ling Han was actually the greatest misfortune for the other contestants. He progressed triumphantly and charged all the way to the top 16. He only had to win another 2 rounds, and he would be able to advance into the 4th level and fight in the final rounds. On the 9th day, Ling Han's opponent was Bewitching Maiden Ro. In this battle, Ling Han will definitely lose. Cheng Fengyun, who had been silent for a few days, became lively again. In the last few days, he had kept his silence. Even if others asked him to provide a commentary, he would only laugh drily. He was not an idiot. Even Tang Feng and Yi Tianhe were no match for Ling Han. If he continued to insist, that would really be asking for punishment. But this time was different. That was because Ling Han's opponent was Bewitching Maiden Ro. Fairy Ro is the holy daughter of the Purity sect, and not only is she as beautiful as a celestial maiden and as alluring as a peach, she has also cultivated the techniques of the Purity sect. To say nothing of men, even women would not be able to resist a slight smile from her. Cheng Fengyun regained the confidence that he had had at the beginning and passed his judgment. He had never been one to fear suffering. And for men, the charm techniques of the Purity sect naturally have even more powerful destructive ability. Faced against one known as the greatest prodigy that would never appear in millions and millions of years in the Purity sect, how could Ling Han win? Everyone in the area did not make a sound, and silently watched as he chattered on and on. After a good while, someone asked, "Why don't we have another gamble?" This time, Cheng Fengyun's self-confidence was really off the charts. He took the initiative to say, if Ling Han can still win, I will dance naked here. To even say such words, it showed how certain he was of his win. The heavier the bet, the more proof it was of his confidence, and the smoother this comeback of his would be. All right, young Master Cheng is indeed heroic. A good few people cheered. Whether it was really praise for Cheng Fengyun was unknown, though. In the arena, bewitching Maiden Ro walked delicately over, her pretty face still as beautiful as a celestial maiden's, exuding a seduction that would bewitch the soul. As her slender waist swayed, her hips pulled, causing anyone's heart to melt. However, her brows were wrinkled in a frown, and she sighed softly and said, "Why have I encountered a monster like you? 2 rounds later at least would have been better." She was really depressed. "Haven't you gone off to the Rock Palace? Why have you come to contest for the Tao-regulating pill here then?" "I forfeit." She directly gave up without even a fight. "Pooh." Cheng Fengyun instantly spluttered, a colorful expression on his face. "Fuck." Chapter 1868, Victory. Chapter 1868, Victory. Cheng Fengyun's mouth gaped open, big enough to fit an egg. "What the fuck? Aren't you the holy daughter of the purity sect? Aren't you the supreme calamity that would only appear once in millions and millions of years? Fuck, you actually admit defeat directly without even fighting. Judge, I want to make a report. There's something fishy going on here." Even if Cheng Fengyun's mental activity was incredibly high, he could not say a single word. What could he say? The tournament rules did not say that taking the initiative to admit defeat was disallowed. How could it be that he could force bewitching Maiden Ro to fight with Ling Han? Running naked. He would have to run naked. He felt his vision darken. Whether it was eating stone or slapping himself, he could accept all of that. But to run naked and be completely bare to the public eye, this was really something that he could not accept. But the problem was that these words were a boast that he had personally made. Just see, he had brought evil onto himself, hadn't he? His eyes wandered, and saw that every person in his vicinity was looking at him smilingly. "I will take it off," he announced loudly. Young Master Cheng's character was definitely good regarding gambling. After exiting the arena, bewitching Maiden Ro set off in pursuit. "Brother Ling, why didn't you go to Rock Palace?" This bewitching maiden was extremely alluring. She was clearly speaking about something serious, but gave off the feeling as if she was lying on the bed and whispering soft words, immediately inciting dangerous thoughts. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden instantly became alert. She was not the empress who had the confidence to look down on the whole world. She was only a little woman, and definitely did not hope that Ling Han would find other women. Thus, she maintained a strong dislike towards bewitching Maiden Ro, and did not hope that she was too close with Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. It's hard to explain. He did not want to speak of his own misfortunes, how he would encounter 2 great elites exchanging blows when he had been on his way, and was innocently implicated, and had the black murderous curse planted in him by old demon blood shadow. "Oh." Bewitching Maiden Ro was a little displeased. "Why are you always so cool towards me? Did I offend you? Damn man, so despicable." She was cursing in her heart, but the smile on her face became even sweeter and more alluring. The techniques of the purity sect were like this. The crueler and fiercer you were towards me, the more beautifully I would still smile. Otherwise, this technique could not be unleashed. Unfortunately, this kind of charm technique did not have the slightest effect on Ling Han. He waved a hand and strode off. Bewitching Maiden Ro could only stomp her feet in rage. It was the first time she had encountered a man that completely did not fall for her charms, and she was completely helpless. A day later, Ling Han was matched with the last opponent of the first level, a man called Shu. He had no surname. However, that might not be his name, but only a code name. This man looked very ordinary, and his journey all the way here had been bumpy as well. He had only narrowly won over every opponent, but the crux of the matter was that no matter how strong his opponent would be, he would always manage to win. Ling Han stood facing him. Shu did not have a tall build, and had average looks, belonging to that category that would definitely not attract any notice in a crowd. Furthermore, there was not the slightest sliver of aura that escaped from him. He really was like a completely ordinary person. Merely in this aspect, he was already not ordinary. Being able to control the aura in his body such that not a bit would seep out like this was the display of the strongest. Young Master Cheng. On the spectators' seats, everyone once again looked towards Cheng Fengyun. One could not help but be impressed by this person. He had eaten stone, slapped himself, and run naked in public, but he actually still managed to arrive on time. There was really no one that could compare to his toughness. Cheng Fengyun shook his head repeatedly. Today, he was not going to give a commentary even if it killed him. I will only be a quiet, handsome guy today. Everyone couldn't help but feel disappointed. Their enjoyment had decreased a bit. In the arena, Ling Han made a gesture of invitation and said, "Make your move." He did not take his opponent lightly. Being able to charge all the way into the top 8, there would definitely not be any weaklings. Perhaps he was like him, too incredibly powerful. Shu set his eyes on Ling Han and bared his mouth in a grin. However, this grin was terrifying. He actually didn't have any teeth nor a tongue. There was actually a dead man's face in his mouth, smiling eerily at Ling Han. Even if Ling Han was extremely brave, he couldn't help but feel his heart tremble, and a coldness rose up in him. Right at this moment, Shu's figure flashed, and he had already charged towards Ling Han. His right hand was raised, holding a thin sword. This was really a thin sword, not much wider than a hair. As cold light flashed, "Shio, shio, shio, shio," he pierced out at Ling Han. His speed was really too high. In an instant, he had already delivered countless stabs. It clearly was only a thin sword, but because it was too fast, it seemed as if blades were raining down. The air itself was forcibly pierced through as power of regulation flailed. So powerful. Cheng Fengyun was dumbfounded and immediately felt incredible regret. Fuck. Why didn't he make a bet today? He could have one. He really wanted to stomp his feet in fury. He had already been stifled for a good few days, and even in his dreams he wanted to see Ling Han lose, and then pass judgment to release the gloomy feelings in his heart. But when the chance came, he had actually missed it. Everyone was also dazzled by the scene. Who would believe that an average-looking person would actually burst out with this kind of battle prowess? Ling Han actually didn't have the slightest ability to counter in front of this opponent. However, Shu did not look the slightest bit proud. Others might not know, but he was very clear. Ling Han seemed to have sustained innumerable stabs, but not a single blade had truly stabbed into Ling Han's body. The latter was truly strong, having the power of regulation to defend himself. It was like great Tao had wrapped around him. No matter how he attacked, it was completely ineffective. Right at this moment, Ling Han suddenly moved and looked towards him. Shu couldn't help but feel his heart freeze. He hurriedly bounced back and retreated. The feeling this opponent gave him was like he was looking at a tall mountain. If it did not move, you could be a little willful, but the moment it counterread, then the earth would crack, mountains would collapse, and seas overturn. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Not too bad. Among the opponents that I have encountered these days, you can be ranked at the top." This person had battle prowess close to Emperor tier. Even if he had met the likes of Zi Bingyun and Luo Qingfeng, he would be able to exchange one or two blows. Too bad, the person he encountered was him. Ling Han moved, and his 5 fingers stretched out, pressing out at Shu. The palm had not landed, but the aura was already like a heavy mountain, exerting so much pressure that Shu sweated like mad. He felt completely scared out of his wits and wanted to dodge, but it was as if lead had been poured into his legs. He couldn't move at all. However, he was an existence that was close to Emperor tier. After all, Shu gave a battle cry and struggled free of the pressure Ling Han exerted on his spirit, once again brandishing his sword in attack. Even if he was defeated, he wanted to be defeated in battle. Boom! In this clash of 2 strikes, Shu was sent flying outwards and fell onto the ground, no longer being able to get back up. On the spectators' seats, It was once again dead silence. Everyone had initially thought Ling Han would definitely lose, but had never imagined that they would have barely even finished the thought when Ling Han would have already turned the tables around and won. This turn of events had really happened too quickly. Meanwhile, Cheng Fengyun secretly marveled at his luck and felt lingering fear. Thankfully, he hadn't made a bet today. Otherwise, he had best wait until they were at the 4th level so the freaks there could deal with Ling Han. After this day ended, the 4 strongest from the 1st level had all been determined, and they were Ling Han, Zhang Quan, He Yu, and Yang Biyue. Aside from Ling Han, the other 3 were all heirs of 3-star forces, having the aptitude of King tier. Otherwise, they couldn't have possibly emerged victorious from this kind of fierce competition. They did not return to their original accommodations, but had rather been gathered together. They would immediately go to the 4th level, and the contest for the final rounds would begin the very next day. Ling Han was also very expectant. There were even better time cultivation chambers on the 4th level. He wanted to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills as soon as possible. Once he succeeded, he could use this as a stepping stone and open the doors to the interior of Alchemy City. Chapter 1869, Arrogance Without Bounds. Chapter 1869, Arrogance Without Bounds. Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden went to the 4th level via the transfer formation. As the victors of the tournament, the 4 still had some slight privileges. They were allowed to bring 1 or 2 people with them into the 4th level, but it was only limited to the tournament period. After it ended, they would have to leave within 3 days. Those who wanted to watch the tournament did not have that good luck. They could only pay to travel through the transfer formation. Not going to use it. With how colossal the space was in every level, would you manage to arrive in time if you ran? This transfer formation charged a star stone for each trip, and furthermore, it could not stop at the 4th level. You would have to return on the same day that you had come. Back and forth, that would be 2 star stones. It was rumored that Alchemist Zi Cheng also had a share in the transfer formation. He really had a good business acumen. After arriving on the 4th level, Ling Han and his group had their accommodations arranged. At most, they could only stay here for 3 days. Additionally, the victors from the 2nd and 3rd levels would also be staying here. They were basically the natives of the city and would directly return once they had finished the tournament. Meanwhile, the victors of the 4th level were not here. They would only appear on the next day. However, when it was midnight, a frightening aura rolled out, causing the 12 people who had qualified for the next round in this courtyard to wake and become alert. So powerful. They all opened their doors and exited, and saw that there was a man standing proudly in the skies. He was like a divine god, exuding an aura that ruled supreme over the whole world. Zi Qingfeng. Someone recognized this person and called out his name, but his voice was actually trembling. Being able to qualify for the final rounds, which of them were not king tiers, but to actually tremble all over just by speaking a name, that showed how vicious Zhao Qingfeng was and how frighteningly strong he was. Zhao Qingfeng. Clearly, there were a considerable number that had heard his name before. The other king tiers all frowned, looking wary. It was rumored that not only was Zhao Qingfeng overwhelmingly strong, he also had a cruel nature and had a fondness for killing prodigies. One should pray not to become the target of his attention, or he would have to pray for good fortune after he left Alchemy City. Zhao Qingfeng clasped his hands behind his back, looking down on everyone from his lofty position, strong contempt in his eyes. A bunch of trash, really rubbish, not even capable of making me interested in making a move. Everyone couldn't help but feel furious. Which one of them was not a king tier? There were 1 or 2, in fact, that were so strong that they had reached the level of emperor tier. And you actually said that they were trash and rubbish? Who could tolerate that? Dissatisfied? Zhao Qingfeng scoffed, stretched out a hand, and pressed down. Shio, 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 shio. Innumerable green rays of light shot down from the skies. Those were multiple green swords, and they were all formed from seals of great Tao, filling the skies in their descent. Wang. It was as if the great Tao itself was suppressing them, which was astonishingly frightening. Everyone hurriedly moved to parry the incoming attack. Pong, pong, pong. The whole courtyard was practically obliterated in an instant, and when the clouds of dust dispersed, the majority of people were lying on the ground. Even if there were a few that had not lain down, they still bore some injuries. A casual move, but it was capable of wounding over a dozen king tiers and even emperor tiers with a single strike. Just what kind of terrifying strength was this? This was Zhao Qingfeng. What was more frightening was that he was clearly already so strong, yet was still one of the 4 heavenly kings under Yin Xinlu and Yin Xinlu. He was not even the heir of a 9 heavens celestial king tier. I already said that you were trash. Zhao Qingfeng scoffed. I came this time just to tell you all not to waste my time. Tomorrow, there will only be one tournament battle. His eyes were set on the only person who was still standing and unwounded in the area. Ling Han. Ling Han had already drawn Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into the Black Tower. Ling Han? Zhao Qingfeng asked calmly, 2 balls of fire erupting in his eyes. That was a blazing fighting spirit. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The other party actually knew his name? He also looked back at him. Though he was looking upwards, he had a certain pride about his posture, and was not at the slightest bit of advantage in terms of aura. That's right. I am Ling Han, he stated evenly. This Zhao Qingfeng was really very strong. Perhaps he was even stronger than Ling Han had been before he had been tempered by the celestial king tier flames. But now, Ling Han had absolute confidence in himself. Ling Han did not dare underestimate any prodigy in this world, but he similarly would still have absolute confidence in himself. Zhao Qingfeng bared his teeth in a grin and declared, "You are very interesting. Tomorrow will be the finals between you and me." Was this reasonable? There were a total of 16 people who had qualified for the final rounds, and 8 would win, then 4 out of that, and then the last 2 would remain. Only then would the final battle be held, and now he had directly skipped over 3 days of battles. Wasn't he afraid that Alchemist Zi Cheng would seek him out for an accounting? Though Ling Han had never met this alchemist before, he was already capable of saying for certain that he was definitely an old money grubber. "Heh, let's talk about this later," Ling Han said carelessly. Whether it was fighting slowly all the way to the finals, or immediately beginning the battle, he was unafraid. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes swept over him, and he said, "If you people do not automatically forfeit tomorrow, then none of you need even dream of returning alive. Whatever I, Zhao Qingfeng, have said, I promise it will be done." He was arrogant enough, domineering enough, and haughty enough, but he had enough strength too. Everyone was silent. At first, some people had had some hope, but just now, they had been defeated with a single move from Zhao Qingfeng, which naturally was a blow strong enough to destroy all their confidence. In any case, they couldn't possibly win, so what did it matter if they retreated earlier or later? That was Zhao Qingfeng, and they could not afford to trifle with him. The unluckier one was Ling Han. He had become Zhao Qingfeng's target, and he would definitely be killed tomorrow. Ling Han, I anticipate the battle tomorrow. You definitely must not disappoint me, or else. Zhao Qingfeng only looked deeply at Ling Han before leaving with a flutter of his sleeve. This arrogance of his had reached a completely different level. Ling Han propped up his chin and reflected on himself. Had he been too modest? You see, Zhao Qingfeng was only the subordinate of a holy son, yet could actually be arrogant to this extent in Alchemy City. Tomorrow, he was going to crush this guy. Ling Han made his decision. Who cared how freakish a prodigy Yin Xinlu was? That was something to be considered later. Now he very much disliked the look of Zhao Qingfeng, and if he did not crush him, irritation would continue to be stifled in his heart. The courtyard was razed to the ground. However, the other 15 people had no plans to continue the tournament, so they were not so concerned. Some immediately left, while others were still not willing to give up and place their bets on Ling Han. They hoped to see Ling Han make a great comeback and suppress Zhao Qingfeng. Ultimately, this night had still passed. Early in the morning of the second day, Ling Han and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden set out, heading to the arena here. It was very close. What? All the other contestants have forfeited, and now only 2 are left? In the arena, One of the persons in charge couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat as he listened to the report from his subordinate. The tickets had already been sold, yet such a problem had actually cropped up now? "Zhao Qingfeng," he exclaimed through gritted teeth. "Would you die if you fought a few more rounds?" To actually threaten the other contestants so that they would take their own initiative to forfeit. Thankfully, there was at least one that had stayed behind. Otherwise, after working hard for 10 days to half a month, the finals would have actually fizzled out. That would really be too much of a joke. "It can't be helped. We can only directly follow up with the finals," this person in charge said with a sigh. Though Zhao Qingfeng was despicable, who would dare to directly reprimand him? As he was a person that had walked out from an 8th Heaven Celestial King tier-level force, even a finger of his was incredibly precious. Moreover, he was also Yin Xinlu's follower, and as the saying went, when one beat a dog, one had to answer to its master. That was a supreme genius that would definitely become a celestial king. Who dared to offend him? "I hope that this Ling Han is not disappointing and will teach Zhao Qingfeng a good lesson," this person in charge exclaimed, but then he shook his head. This was an impossible feat. Even the holy sons of celestial king tier-level sects had all been easily defeated by Zhao Qingfeng, so how could Ling Han possibly defy the heavens? Chapter 1870, Final Battle. Chapter 1870, Final Battle. On the spectators' seats, when the Master of Ceremonies announced that the final battle would directly begin today, the whole martial arena instantly erupted in a storm of protest. What the heck was this? It had been agreed that they would be able to watch for 4 days consecutively, so why had it been shortened to a single day? You guys had just decided the winner behind closed doors, right? The others fought earnestly all the way here, and in the end, they were disqualified for no reason. But the Master of Ceremonies also said that the other contestants had all forfeited on their own initiative, and they could not force them to fight, after all, right? Thus, whether you were in agreement or otherwise, you would have to accept this result. There would only be one battle, and that was Ling Han against Zhao Qingfeng. Ling Han? Lu Xiaming murmured. Could it be that it was that person? It couldn't be so coincidental, right? Young Master Lu. Sun Dong approached. What is it? Lu Xiaming shook his head and thought that they were only two people who shared the same name. After all, there were really too many people in the celestial realm, so it was not unusual for two people to share the same name. Meanwhile, Sun Dong was almost prostrating himself in admiration of Zhao Qingfeng. He said that he would directly fight the final battle, and he was really going to fight the final battle. All the others had been scared into flight. He was really too domineering. In this battle against Ling Han, that damn guy would definitely be crushed into dust by Zhao Qingfeng. After waiting for so many days, the moment for his revenge had finally come. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun also had a feeling of exultation. Today, Ling Han was definitely going to be defeated. Initially, it was still possible for Ling Han to stay a few more days on this stage, but today is the final battle, and he is facing Zhao Qingfeng directly. Then that would mean undoubted defeat. He spoke frankly with assurance, as if he was Zhao Qingfeng himself. However, there was no one stoking the fires today, because everyone had heard about Zhao Qingfeng's past deeds. Just some time ago, he had directly forced a few holy sons and holy daughter from several celestial king tier-level sects to leave, and 3 of the victors of the 4th level had also forfeited. That was all because they were wary of Zhao Qingfeng. This person was so strong that he had reached the level of destroying worlds. No matter how strong Ling Han was, he could only lose in resentment faced with Zhao Qingfeng. The only question here was exactly how many moves Ling Han could survive. 3, 5, 10. And he still dared to fight. His courage was really admirable. After the Master of Ceremonies blabbered for a while, this final battle that was much anticipated, yet taking place ahead of time, was finally going to begin. The 2 contestants came on stage. And suddenly, an expression of shock appeared on Lu Xinming's face. He had seen Ling Han. Fuck, it really was this guy. He couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. This world was really too small, wasn't it? Not even a year had passed, and he had met Ling Han again. No. Lu Xinming immediately thought in his heart. He could not allow Ling Han to die at Zhao Qingfeng's hands. Firstly, he still owed his life to the former, and secondly, Ling Han's strength was very powerful, and he needed this kind of helper. He would step out to stop the battle after Ling Han was defeated. With his identity, Zhao Qingfeng would have to give him some face. In this manner, he would repay Ling Han's kindness, and could take advantage of the chance to recruit him too. Haha, what a great idea. Sun Dong did not notice the changing expressions on Lu Xinming's face. After he saw Ling Han, his whole head was filled with the tragic scene of having his *S pierced, and he wanted nothing more than to devour Ling Han's flesh and drink his blood. Begin. The master of ceremonies waved a hand and left the stage to these two young prodigies. Zhao Qingfeng stood, clasping his hands behind his back. He set his eyes on Ling Han and said, "Not bad. At least you have some courage. I thought you would be a coward as well." Ling Han chuckled and said, "If I left, who would beat you to mush?" "Ha ha ha, your courage is something to be praised. I hope your strength will not disappoint me." Zhao Qingfeng was not angered, but instead laughed. His only fear was that Ling Han was not strong enough, and could not give him a strong enough stimulation, arousing all his potential. The longer he stayed at the fourth severance, the lower the chances were for breaking through to the fifth severance. The accumulation of power over time was of no use at all. Instead, it would only cause a contrary effect. Ling Han said, "I, too, hope that you are strong. Otherwise, stepping on a weakling would be something very boring. Arrogant, but there is no meaning to it." Zhao Qingfeng raised his right hand, and a green halo of light appeared in the palm of his hand. Then, a green sword appeared within the green halo, and he gripped it in his hand. Zhao Qingfeng showed a cruel expression. For this feast, he had already waited for a very long time, and now he was impatient to finally enjoy it. Cruelly killing a prodigy that was close to his equal would endlessly arouse his Tao heart. That was right. He had cultivated the regulation of slaughter. Of all the kings in the world, Qingfeng is the strongest. Zhao Qingfeng stated calmly, an indescribable pride clear in his tone. Ling Han was surprised. This guy was really shameless. Of all the kings in the world, you actually dared to call yourself the strongest. Where had you gotten such courage from? It should be known that even Yin Xianlu did not have the right to call himself the strongest. What more you? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh out loud and shook his head. You actually dare laugh at me? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly, and the green blade in his hand rose, striking out at the empty air in front of Ling Han. Shua, a flash of sword chi swept out, turning into a sword that was 30,000 meters long, and slashing harshly at Ling Han. He was arrogant, but he was indeed strong. This strike had gathered supreme great Tao, as if it could slice open the heavens and earth. As expected of a prodigy from the Eternal Prosperity sect. On the spectators' seats, a few powerful figures were watching the battle. They were all ascending origin tier elites, the strongest beneath Celestial King tier. In their eyes, to say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng and Ling Han, even if Yin Xianlu had come, he would only be a child. No matter how strong your potential was, that was a matter of the future. How could a severing mundane tier possibly gain the serious notice of ascending origin tiers? His battle prowess is indeed strong enough. The powerful figures made their assessment. This brat has already cultivated the severing mundane tier to perfection. I do not believe that he is incapable of breaking through to the dividing soul tier with his talent. Unless... These powerful figures all exchanged looks and could see a sliver of shock in each other's eyes. They had thought of a legend. It really was just a legend. At least, they had never heard of anyone who had successfully accomplished it. Above the fourth severance, there was still the fifth severance. Whichever Celestial King tier sect this boy went to, he would be qualified to become a holy son. However, he still chose to become Yin Xianlu's follower. Perhaps it is also for the sake of completing the fifth severance. These powerful figures were all guessing, and a hint of admiration appeared in their expressions. Even they were slightly stunned by Zhao Qingfeng's resolve. However, with this, old Zi Cheng would definitely be stomping his feet in fury after causing him to earn a lot less profit for no reason. A shorty that had his hair tied in countless braids suddenly said with a laugh, "Ha ha ha ha." The other powerful figures all laughed loudly. Thinking of that money-grubber look of Alchemist Zi Cheng, they really anticipated the expression he would have on his face when he heard of the news. Amidst the laughter of these mighty figures, this flash of sword Qi Zhao Qingfeng had shot out blasted towards Ling Han. Ling Han shot out a fist. Pong! The regulations of fire entwined around his fist, and his punch landed on the sword Qi. The sword Qi crumbled instantly. However, Ling Han was also forced into a retreat by the shock wave caused by this clash, all the way until he had reached the boundary of the arena, and then his retreat was stopped by the wall behind him. With a bang, he had crashed so hard into the wall that it shook. What a frightening strike! It was only a careless wave, and it already possessed such might. Ling Han frowned slightly. He was not inferior to his opponent in talent, but because there was a gap of a minor level between them, with third severance against fourth severance, and added with the fact that Zhao Qingfeng was also close to monarch tier level, he had fallen into a disadvantage. This is fun. Let's battle, then. Chapter 1871. You have disappointed me too much. Chapter 1871. You have disappointed me too much. Ling Han released a battle cry and stepped strongly with his feet. Pong! His whole person instantly shot out like a sharp arrow, charging back over to Zhao Qingfeng. Physical power added with origin power was unleashed through regulations of lightning, and Ling Han's speed was indescribably fast. He raised his fist and harshly threw a punch at Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng was slightly surprised. While Ling Han's battle prowess was inferior to his, he had not been injured even when he had taken this strike from him head-on. This kind of defense caused even him to be slightly impressed. However, this was the prodigy that he anticipated. If Ling Han was only so mediocre that he would be killed with a few moves from him, how could he possibly arouse his Dao heart then? He raised his sword in a sweep and sliced out at Ling Han. Wang! The sword exuded a terrifying cold light, and there were patterns of great Dao flickering. It was a pseudo-celestial tool by itself, and added with the powerful martial intent of Zhao Qingfeng, an endless might was instantly unleashed. Ling Han shouted loudly and pushed the power of lightning to its pinnacle. Pong! A fierce clash, and he was once again sent flying. However, his physique was really too strong. Additionally, the right hand that had directly clashed with was wrapped in regulations of lightning, and he was not injured by the pseudo-celestial tool. This time, Zhao Qingfeng was really stunned. Previously, he had only delivered a flash of sword Qi, so it was very normal that Ling Han could have taken it head-on without any injury, but now? That was really a genuine strike. And there was also the Qi of slaughter that he had cultivated instilled in this strike, possessing incredibly frightening destructive power. And even with that, Ling Han was not injured. In fact, his fist hadn't even been scraped. Zhao Qingfeng was trembling slightly. However, it was not because of fear, but rather excitement. A good opponent was incredibly rare. If he could not find a suitable opponent, he would even battle the other three heavenly kings under Yan Xianlu to death. Only then could he completely arouse his full fighting spirit and have a battle that was brilliant to the extreme. He naturally did not want that. If Yan Xianlu was angered, even he would shiver in fear. And now, an outsider had similarly aroused his fighting spirit. This naturally was best. It could refine his Dao heart, and he would also not have to anger Yan Xianlu. This was practically a gift that the heavens had bestowed on him. To repay you, I will ensure that you die in incredible agony, so that this world will remember your anguish. Zhao Qingfeng stuck out his tongue and licked the blade of his sword. Even his eyes were slightly dazed, but his frightening aura surged out of his body like a tsunami, which also made him incredibly dangerous. Cultivating regulation of slaughter, he would not even remember who he was when he went nuts. His only thought was killing. Ling Han did not dare to be careless. This was definitely the strongest opponent among his peers that he had encountered in his life. The likes of Zi Bingyun and Luo Qingfeng weren't even qualified to pick up Zhao Qingfeng's shoes. He released a battle cry, and the divine demon sword was summoned. Channeling the power of lightning, he clashed with Zhao Qingfeng. The two young prodigies' fighting spirit blazed, and they brandished their swords in a head-on clash with the other. Ding, ding, ding. Crisp sounds rang out continuously, and as they moved, they turned into loud blasts of thunder, deafening with their volume. Every time they clashed, it was a clash of great Tao. A dazzling light appeared, which then turned into a terrifying explosion. If this had not been the arena, where there were protective formations in place, it would definitely have been razed to the ground already, and also caused massive damage to the spectators. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but ball her hands into fists. She had heard of Zhao Qingfeng's reputation. He was doubtlessly a prodigy, and was also a maniac at the same time. Practically no one that he had set his eyes on could escape the fate of being killed. Though she was angered by Ling Han's lack of sensitivity, they had fought together on the same side a few times, and a certain level of amiable relations had naturally developed between them. She had no wish to see Ling Han die in Zhao Qingfeng's hands. But Zhao Qingfeng was too strong. He was completely suppressing Ling Han in the battle. Though Ling Han's defenses were indeed very strong, he could not hold on for long. There would come a time that his defenses would be penetrated. Her heart became anxious, and her fists also became more tightly clenched. Meanwhile, Sun Dong became excited. At the same time, he was also slightly impatient. It was clear that Zhao Qingfeng completely had the upper hand. So why was he still unable to kill Ling Han? Someone who had the same thoughts as he was Cheng Fengyun. He wanted nothing more than to go into the arena and give Zhao Qingfeng a hand. Ling Han had fallen into a disadvantage. Everyone could see that, and with every clash, just when everyone thought that Ling Han would not be able to hold on any longer, he always managed to stand back up like nothing had happened. This guy was also a freak. The cruel smile at Zhao Qingfeng's lips became more and more pronounced. He liked this kind of prodigy that had powerful toughness. Only then would he have enough fun through killing him, especially when his blade had sliced open Ling Han's neck and chest. Seeing that blood-splattered scene, his Tao heart would also be refined to the pinnacle in an instant, and he would be able to easily push open the barriers to his cultivation level. Be stronger so that all the blood burning in his body would blaze even stronger. Only when he killed Ling Han could he open the doors to the fifth severance. Ling Han seemed to be in a precarious position, but only he himself knew that he was not in the slightest danger at all. The strength of his physique had practically rushed up to the level of level 3 pseudo-divine metal. This meant that if anyone wanted to wound him, he would have to push his battle prowess up to the level of Yang Soul, at least. Fifth severance could be treated like Yang Soul, but was Zhao Qingfeng in the fifth severance? No way. What a joke. The reason why he had fallen into a disadvantage was firstly that he was a cultivation level lower, and secondly because he had only used the regulations of lightning. There were many regulations he had grasped, but if they were ranked in terms of power, the first place naturally belonged to regulations of fire, second was water, and lightning was only third. As for space, time, slaughter, and so on, he had only just barely touched on these areas. Using the regulations that were ranked third to face an opponent whose strength was close to his, wasn't it very natural that he had fallen into a disadvantage? Ling Han, if you only have this little bit of strength, your blood will definitely be spilt within 3 moves. Zhao Qingfeng's whole body was surging with a murderous aura. He had already boosted his regulation of slaughter to the pinnacle. The present him was a god of slaughter. Ling Han humphed. He, too, wanted to use the opponent to open the doors to the fourth severance. Otherwise, he would have directly drawn on the strongest power of a fire divine fetus. That destructive power that would explode in an instant was incredibly frightening. I already said not to disappoint me, but you only have this bit of strength. It's not enough. Not enough. Not enough. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes were bloodshot. Being able to withstand strong attacks was still not enough to completely arouse his murderous heart. He roared. Wong! His sword trembled slightly, and a streak of light flashed past. This pseudo-celestial tool instantly exploded with an incredible blaze of light, as if a blunt weapon had suddenly been sharpened into a blade. Shua, as the sword struck, a streak of blood actually spewed from Ling Han's body. Thankfully, it was only his skin that was scraped, and it was not a bone-deep wound. His strongest part was naturally his bones. They had reached close to the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal, but his skin, blood, and flesh was not as freakish as that. However, being able to split Ling Han's skin with a strike, the force behind this strike was really extremely strong. You think I have just cultivated the regulation of slaughter? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly. Wrong. I am a bronze divine fetus, metal element. This is my original elemental alignment, and also my strongest regulations. No wonder. The murderous aura of regulation of slaughter was filled with endless destructive power, and the air of sharp metal similarly was focused on offensive. With the two compounded together, he was naturally capable of conquering every obstacle. You only have that little bit of strength? This is too sad, and to think I thought of you as a rival. I held myself back for so many days to finally make my move. You have disappointed me too much. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.